Hello, everyone, and welcome to some very special postseason coverage for Big Brother 23 here on Rob is a Podcast. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and I am here today to present to you an in-person interview with America's favorite player herself. It's Tiffany, and we are doing a deep dive, a highly requested deep dive with Tiffany. She was extremely kind and invited me to the Todrick estate, and Todrick himself was very generous and allowed me to film this interview at his beautiful house. And so I packed up my ill-suited for in-person recording equipment, and I drove over, and we made it happen. We did this interview. It took place over the course of 2 days, because there's quite a lot to get through. It's a long one, and they're very, very busy over there. So I hope you guys don't mind. There are a bunch of cuts, here and there, as we filmed in segments. I also had a couple of technical snafus that that I had to work around. So I apologize. I had to use a backup camera, which was just a laptop at one point, so I apologize for that. But we have a couple different locations. Audio was good for most of it, and so I think it actually turned out pretty well. So I'm excited for you guys to see. I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, but yeah, let's get to it. This is Tiffany and her Big Brother 23 game. Tiffany, hello.
Yes. Hi, Taran.
How's it going?
It's going wonderful.
How have you been since you got out?
I've been great. I have not really acclimated myself into the real world yet. I've not turned on a live television. I know no news. I'm still just trying to decompress a little bit.
Yeah. You mostly know that you've managed to get here to this wonderful fantasy land. I feel like I stepped into a dream.
I feel like I stepped into a dream. I stepped out of one dream and into another dream.
Yeah. Can you just explain where we are?
So we are welcome to Todrick Hall's home, and where I was welcomed, and I actually brought some of my BB fam along with me. And so Todrick had a finale party for us on the night that the finale was, and he invited us all here, and it was so welcoming, and he was so cool, and he was so nice about it. And so we had actually all gotten an Airbnb so that we could stay. We knew that we wanted to stay and stay an extra week, see if there were some opportunities we could expand on while we were here, instead of just running back home and then maybe having to fly back out to LA if there were some opportunities for us. And then Todrick said, well, why don't you guys stay here? And I thought that was really dope. And because he was going to London for his awards ceremony. He's like, you guys can just stay at my house. So, it's funny because they're like, not Tiffany finessing Todrick out of his house for a week. I did not. He was just so kind. He is such the kindest person, so sharing, so giving. He reminds me a lot of myself, just want people to be happy and enjoy themselves. And he's a huge fan of the show, and he was a huge fan of mine. And so it's like together, we're just great.
Yeah, I mean, kind enough to even let me to pop in.
Welcomed you into his home. Yes, absolutely.
Yes,
whatever you need to get done while you're here, you're welcome to do it here. So I thought that was phenomenal.
It was very kind of you to extend, and Todrick to extend the invite. Very excited to do this in person. We don't usually get this opportunity to do the deep. I think, in fact, I've done a Taran show interview with Derek Levasseur in person. Okay. But I've never done a postseason deep dive in person before.
Oh, so I feel honored to be in the same category as Derek.
Very much so. So we are here. We're gonna run through your game.
Okay.
All through season 23.
I
went through, so usually what I do at the end of the season is I run through the final three and their games across the season. Okay. And I talked about Big D's game, Oz's game, and Xavier's game. And everyone was like, you have to talk about Tiffany's game. I mean, that was the game of Big Brother 23.
It's all for you I'm here for you to ask me all your questions.
So it's a great opportunity.
Okay, so what I want to do is go week by week,
Okay.
kind of like through the game, through your decision making and
Okay.
and what was happening at the time. Can you first just tell me like what is your history with Big Brother? When did you think to apply? How long have you been applying? All that kind of stuff.
So I first started watching Big Brother season 14, the season of coaches. And I walked into a friend's house. She's like, you don't know about Big Brother? And I'm like, no. She's like, you would love it. And so as I'm watching, she's like, oh, well, these are past players. Janelle played before, Dan played before. And I'm like, no. This isn't going to work for me. I need to know who these people are. So I actually left because I was getting into the show. And I was like, no, I don't even want to watch. I want to go back and see what this show is actually about. So I am supposed to be at my job working, but I've got my phone set up and I'm on YouTube watching all of the old BB. I started all the way back from BB1 until I watched them all. And then I just fell in love and became a super fan. And I knew then, like, this is something I feel like I can do. I am a social being. I just love people and relationships, bonding. I always try to, even if they don't work, I still want to find out a way to make them work. So I'm like, I want to go on Big Brother. I did not apply until 2020. My son was young when I fell in love with the show, but I think subconsciously I was always trying to prepare him for me to be able to leave. And so he's like so mature. He is definitely a young man. My son is so independent. And I think I always knew I was going to leave and he would need to be able to take care of himself. So with the support of my family, of course, but he's such an easy person for them to manage. So 2020, I'm like, okay, I would love to turn 40 in the Big Brother house, even though everyone knows I'm 22 in the Big Brother house. 22, and that's it.
I mean, like, maybe you would have turned 23, but
maybe. So I applied. I submitted my video, and I actually read Dan Giesling's How to Get Casted on a reality show and how he made it onto Big Brother. So I read it in detail. I actually wrote out my script, put my video together. I was so invested in it and everything was very intentional. I totally put all of my energy into focusing on this video will get me cast for Big Brother. I will be on there. But I was thinking it was going to be 2020. So I submitted it, did not hear a thing. I was like, okay, so yeah, I didn't make it. But then I saw they had an all-star cast. I still wasn't thinking that I had made it at all. So this year rolls around, and that was probably like March or something I did that. So this year rolls around, and I'm thinking to myself, like, am I going to apply again? I was like, I don't know. I would just send the same video. Before I could even make a decision about it, I got a call.
oh, wow.
And I really was thinking somebody was playing on my phone because all of my friends and all of my family know I am a huge Big Brother fan. I definitely wanted to get on the show. And so when I get the call, I'm like, you are not serious. And from there, it happened.
Oh. So you get cast. Good to know that they were not sleeping on you there.
It is good to know. I always say thanks for taking the chance on an unknown kid.
So you get on the show. And you get on stage. It's time to go into the house. You meet the people for the first time.
Yes.
What's going through your head?
Overwhelmed. Beautiful cast. A whole bunch of strangers. I don't know how to size anyone up. I can't remember anybody's name. I almost can't remember my own name. I don't know what I want them to know about me. I don't know how to present myself. I am so nervous, but I am so excited to be in this house. I walk through the doors and I'm like, I cannot believe I am in this house. This is the house where all of the greats have come, lived, played, strategized. I'm like, it was very unreal to me, but I knew that I wanted to just be myself and socialize, but I did not want to bring any attention to myself. But that always fails. I don't think I have to do anything for attention to just find me, like nothing at all.
Yeah. Well, right away, you end up on the Queen's team. With Claire, Kyland, and R.I.P. Travis.
R.I.P. Travis.
But Frenchie wins the HOH.
Yes.
And right away, Frenchie, I think one of the first things we saw on the feeds was Frenchie talking to you about like being an older player, and how he wants the older players to do well.
He did.
And then you talked with Whitney about like proposing something with him, and there was this talk of like an older person alliance. I don't know why they were including you in that as a 22-year-old.
Either. It's very weird. Maybe just because I was a parent.
You just fit in so well, you know. Yeah, you just got in there. But you were in there with Frenchie for the first couple of nights. He was talking about his big plan to do the eulogy to backdoor Brent with his own speech, and you were like, yeah,
whatever Frenchie wanted to do, as long as it didn't include me being on the block. I was so good with Frenchie. I trusted that he was not coming after me. I really believed that he wanted to keep me safe, and also I liked that he seemed ready to play the game. I was ready to play the game myself. Week 1, coming into the house, I knew I wanted to play the game. So I did want to work with Frenchie in the beginning.
Yeah. you were very somebody that was very vocal early on that like, hey, if you're not in the big alliance, if you don't think there's a big alliance, then you're not in it.
Yes.
And you were sort of encouraging the idea of like, let's create one.
Yes.
Let's get one started. You were in like a couple of the variations of the slaughterhouse that emerged. I don't think you were ever informed, but you were in a couple of them because there were a bunch.
I believe that the slaughterhouse had that onion strategy where there was the slaughterhouse and then there were smaller alliances.
The butchers.
Yeah, see, I didn't know about the butchers. I didn't know about the butchers until like after the game. I'm like, what is the butchers? Okay, that's interesting. But I think there were a lot of overlapping alliances, and I myself had a lot of overlapping alliances. So I figured that I was being protected by these people who had these big alliances, even if I wasn't a part of the big alliance. And honestly, I didn't want to be a part of the big alliance. I could see that Frenchie was a tornado waiting to happen immediately. And so I was glad that he didn't pull me into an alliance because I didn't want to have allegiance to the team that I was not confident in. So I kind of tried to stay out of his room unless he asked me to come in. I was like, nope. Frenchie probably got about 2 hours of sleep every night on his HOH, and I was not trying to be a part of that.
Yeah, he made me get 2 hours of sleep every night. So week 1 was a weird one because it was so all over the place. Frenchie was initially targeting Brent. He has a conversation with Brent, and now Brent's his best friend.
That's when I knew.
Yeah.
I was like, nope, Frenchie, I cannot deal with you. 1 minute you hate, the next minute you love. You wear your heart on your sleeve. This is not big love. This is big brother.
Yeah, and he was keeping you informed about like that Brent stuff, and that was when sort of that relationship started to not be worked on as much, and it was also so Frenchie again, he had like a bunch of different variations of the slaughterhouse, one of which included a lot of the women. He was talking about how he wanted to work with all the women. So one of the things that like we saw was that he was looking for, when he talked to Brent, Brent had kind of convinced him, I'm not the real enemy here. The real enemy is Christian. Do you see it? Do you see the way he kind of called dibs on Alyssa? Like, you don't want this guy around. And so he turned around to like, okay, I want to get Christian out. He was looking for a pawn. He asked a bunch of the women and they were like, no. He's like, how dare they?
I ran from, whenever there was a big group and I saw Frenchie coming, I skedaddled as quickly as I could. So I was never around when he was asking for a pawn.
Yep. It wasn't, you weren't there.
Which
is genuinely, I mean, the fact that you weren't there, because he then didn't trust any of the women. I think he asked Azza, I don't remember the other ones, but a bunch of women that
he asked like a group of women
with.
at the hammock. I kept hearing about it. I was like, oh yeah, I was not there. I was sitting at the hammock when he came over. He said, I want to talk to everybody. And then when he left to go do whatever he did, I dipped. I was out. I didn't want to know what he was coming back to suggest, but I was like, if I don't hear it, then I don't know. So if I don't know, I can't be implicated. I can't be responsible.
And I think that was one of the reasons why, like, by the end of the week, he was like, oh, the only people I can trust, Tiffany. And
Yeah, he never got the opportunity for me to tell him no because I was never around when he asked.
yes. So quickly though, Christian wins the wild card competition. Now, when Frenchie had been setting up the slaughterhouse, one of the first people he talked to was Whitney, and then Kyland. When he talked to Kyland, he was talking to Kyland about other people, just saying that we really like each other. Kyland ends up telling Frenchie about how Derek X had been talking about how he wasn't a huge fan of Whitney, but Frenchie was a big fan of Whitney. And so Frenchie now has in his mind, like, I don't know about this DX kid.
Okay.
And when Christian ends up winning this wild card competition, Christian is now safe, and Frenchie's like, it's DX's fault. That's the only reason you were even in. I mean, I'm not saying you were in trouble, but I've been hearing that DX is starting rumors about you.
Oh, wow.
And so this starts spiraling. Derek becomes.
See, you're telling me things that I don't even know.
Let me tell you, this first week was a wild ride to follow even.
Okay.
So that's because the thing about Derek's game, and maybe I can talk to him a little bit as well about it.
Sure.
But it really wasn't his fault. Like what happened.
I
really
knew it
got,
wasn't Derek's fault. I always knew it wasn't Derek's fault, but I did not know how everything got pinned on him. But I knew that Frenchie was the common denominator because he baited Derek into exposing his own alliance. And I was like, oh, honey, I just started pulling Derek in. Like, I know you don't want to trust anybody, but you have to trust me. Like, I want to keep you with me as long as I can.
Yeah, and so, that's basically what happened. You know, Derek started to get a little worried because of the house mood seemed to have changed around him. He was talking to Travis about like, let's approach Frenchie with a deal. He talked to you. You gave him some advice, and then he talked to Kyland, and he talked to Kyland for a long time. And Frenchie saw him talking to Kyland, and Frenchie was like, Kyland is with them too. And then so he then approached Derek X and he was like, I know. Little birdies have told me what you're doing with your alliances. He's like, what are you talking about? It's like, I know about you and Kylan and Travis. He was like, how did you know? We haven't even done anything yet. But Derek, of course, like sort of over admits to what he's doing. And
he was guilty.
Yeah. And so now, things are not looking great for Derek, but in a way, this ends up all getting turned around on Kyland because Kyland is the person Frenchie feels most upset with because he thought he could trust Kyland. It turns out Kyland is secretly working with Derek X this whole time, which he wasn't really. So Derek is talking to you through all of this. You are sort of like one of the few people that is still willing to sort of talk to him now that he has sort of become this house pariah. You're giving him some advice. And you actually, you helped push for a very short-lived alliance called the Firefighters.
I did.
Which was you, Travis, Claire, Kyland, and Derek.
Yes.
But Kyland didn't seem like he was into this
I don't think Kyland was into it. He wanted to work with Frenchie.
Yeah.
I did not want to work with Frenchie as strongly as Kylan did. I wanted to work with Derek. And one of the reasons I wanted to work with Derek is because he was so close to Travis, and Travis was on my team as the Queens. And I did feel like we should make connections with other teams that would help keep us safe. I had already noticed that Travis and Derek had a tight thing going on. So I was saying, well, why don't we just all work together so that we can have another team that we're working with. Plus, I liked Derek. It was just something about Derek immediately that I liked. I was like, I want to work with this kid. And so since Travis had him, I was like, yes. I thought that Kylan would be good with that because all of us were on the same team except Derek X, but I didn't know that Frenchie had Kylan as tightly as he did. It was only like day 2.
Yeah, it was. And it was interesting too, because at that point, when Kylan was kind of turning down the Firefighters for Frenchie was upstairs like, screw this guy, Kylan.
I knew that. I knew that because Kylan pulled me into that meeting with him and Frenchie that night for him to like get Frenchie to see that he wasn't with Derek, X, and Travis. And so he's like, I want you to come upstairs with me, and all you have to do is like nod and agree. And I really didn't want to get myself involved in it, but I could tell that Frenchie was not buying anything that Kylan was saying. He looked at the live feed camera while Kylan's talking. He's looking up here, and Frenchie's looking at the live feed cameras going. I was like, oh, he is not buying this at all.
Yeah, you told Kylan, we need more than what Frenchie can offer us.
Absolutely.
So tell me about the exact formation of the cookout.
So the first day that I walked into the house, I saw that there were 5 other African Americans. And I was like, okay, I definitely cannot target them because that would definitely look bad on me. I don't have the desire to target them. I came in this house, I want to win because I would love to see a Black winner. That was definitely what I wanted. I would have loved for it to have been me, but I saw that there were 6 of us total, and I'm like, it doesn't make sense for me to go after them. We just get each other out, and then we'd have accomplished nothing. And so we all actually unspokenly had that same thought process. So, you know, as we were passing each other, we were saying to each other, you know, we have to work together, right? And everyone's saying that, like, yeah, you know, we got to work together, just like secretly walking past one. Like I said, Hannah walked up to me the first night and was like, you know, the 6 of us have to stick together. And I'm like, absolutely. So then Derek F comes up to me and he's like, all 6 of us are working together. And I was like, yes, we are. Got it. Deal. I know. We're all good here. And so, he says, I just went up to everyone. I let everyone know all 6 of us are working together. We're not targeting each other. 100%. That was everybody's thought. Then later on this is all day one. So later on that night, Xavier comes past me and he's like, the cookout. Now, I had no idea what he was talking about. I'm like, the cookout? Where is the cookout? What are we talking about? I didn't know this was the Alliance name. And he goes, the cookout, that's what we're called. And I said, okay. Now, here's the thing. When we first started, we weren't necessarily referring to ourselves as an alliance. It was more of an understanding that we would not target each other, but we did put a name on it. But we all had alliances outside of the cookout, but the cookout was started off as an understanding or an agreement that I will not come after anybody from the cookout. And then as it went on, and it really did solidify once the master plan came into place. So we're on 4 teams. We're all separated. We're all on 4 different teams. But we know within our teams, we need to have relationships with other teams so that the teams don't target each other. But then we're also trying to protect the cookout, right? And so I'm building relationships. I've got a strong relationship with GX. I've got a strong relationship with Claire, but then I also have the cookout. It was very confusing to see how we were going to get ahead. But essentially, everyone had a part in contributing to the formation of the cookout. And it doesn't bother me at all because that Derek says that he started the cookout, because he's been saying that since he's been in the house. It did, I'm not going to lie. When he would say that, I would look at people and go, I mean, did you not say that to yourself when you saw all of us in the house? Like, we're all going to work together. So is it really him that created it, or did we all unanimously and even unspokenly say to each other, I am not going to target, we're not going to target one another? But he wants to take credit for it. And because I did not, I will say, I didn't go up to each individual person and say, we're working together. But I did let everyone know I'm not targeting any of us. I mean, he wants to take credit for it. He can have it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Devin started the bomb squad. So, I mean... Great. Yeah. Enzo started the brigade. You know, we've got a great history of the masterminds. Yeah. Starting
Devin.
the alliance.
Oh, Devin.
Okay, so all this stuff is going on with Frenchie. He ends up nominating Kylan and Alyssa.
I was so shocked.
Many people were. I don't think he told anybody. He nominates Alyssa as the bait. For the big fish. And Kylan was essentially, he claimed he was a pawn, but it's essentially retribution for being too tight with Derek X and betraying his trust. But then immediately Alyssa goes up there and he says that he's, Alyssa's the bait because he's looking at Alyssa and Christian as Christian is safe. And so Alyssa immediately goes up there though, and she's like, what the hell?
Right.
And he's like, oh, I thought, I thought you and Christian were a showmans. And she's like,
won.
no, that's actually not the case. And that conversation also comes around to, well, this is all Derek's fault, basically. Derek is thrown under the bus yet again. But in the meantime, you are comforting Kyland, and saying, "Don't worry, like we've got the numbers to make sure you're good," and you did. All pretty much. You only need one more vote.
Yeah.
And you are also you're talking with Azza about what eventually became the Kingslayers,
Yes.
which was another short-lived alliance.
Hey, we're week to week here. It's week to week. We make 1 week deals.
Yes, and in the meantime, Frenchie is going back and forth. Brent feels like he has a hold on Derek because he's like, "You owe me now."
Yes.
And Derek is like, "Yes." And so, so Brent is like, "Travis, you take out Travis instead. Leave my guy Derek in here." And then Derek ends up winning the veto anyway, and he wants to use it on Kyland, which is what Brent wants, and it's what Frenchie wants. But Frenchie changes his mind. He wants Kyland out, actually, at this point. And so I don't know if you know this. Frenchie spent an entire, he spent an entire night trying to convince Derek to not use the veto on Kyland.
I could feel that. I felt that. And that's why I pulled Derek into the storage room to ask him what was he going to do with the veto.
Yes, and so... He literally followed him into bed and was like, "I don't know. Don't you think the real manly move is to not use the power?"
Oh, wow.
And he was like, "No, actually."
Wow.
So Kyland and Frenchie get into it. All of this stuff happens, but Brent kind of talks Frenchie into like being okay with Travis leaving. This is when you are going to talk to Claire about like, hey, I think we should maybe work with some of the Kings like Christian and X.
Yes.
You talked to Sarah Beth and Claire about forming the jackpot,
Yes.
Which eventually happens, which really turned out bad for Sarah Beth more than anything.
Thanks, Taran.
Well, only because she told Kyland.
She did tell
that
Kyland.
was the problem.
That was definitely
it could have
the
worked out
problem.
great for her.
I definitely started looking at her differently when he told me he knew about Jackpot. I'm like, oh, she really trusts you because she didn't tell us about her alliance with him.
Exactly, yeah. And so he had told her about Slaughterhouse in that first week, and that's part of how she helped I don't know if you... Because this happened in tandem, that you were destroying Slaughterhouse in week 2, and at the same time she was as well, because she was aware of it, and she approached the Kings in week 2 and said, "Hey, Frenchie told me about Slaughterhouse when it was really Kyland."
Okay, good game.
And she was like, "I'm not mad at you guys. I just want to be in it." And so they were like, "We can't trust Frenchie. This whole Slaughterhouse thing is like." Who knows? And then, of course, Frenchie's like, "F the Slaughterhouse."
He was. But I already knew that he was going to create the Slaughterhouse because he told Claire and I about it on night 1.
He told everybody about it. He told half the house about Slaughterhouse and the Butcher's concept. And then he invited half the house into the Slaughterhouse and then half of them into the Butchers. And it was like, if you're in the Slaughterhouse, surely you now know that the Butchers exist without you. And if you're not in the Slaughterhouse, surely you know that the Slaughterhouse exists without you. Frenchie also created French kisses.
Oh my gosh. This whole French kisses thing, Taran, what do you want us to know about French kisses?
There's not much to say. He formed it and then immediately ratted it out to Brent and them. And Brent is going to spend the rest of his time in the house talking about how we need to get the females out. And you spent a lot of this time talking. You tell Sarah Beth that Frenchie is the new Devin. He
was definitely the new Devin.
Yes, you talked to Sarah Beth about not targeting Derek, because at this time Sarah Beth was very intent on targeting Derek X. She thought that he had said her name, and Kyland at this time had not really pushed back too much. He does a little bit later. You're also going to Big D, saying we shouldn't target Derek. He was wanting to target Derek at the time. You tell Big D that Frenchie's no good. This guy's fried. And that was the beginning of the end for your relationship with Big D because he loved Kylan. Frenchie.
I know. I just could not understand how people didn't see how dangerous he was. I had, on a personal level, I liked Frenchie. I would have loved to keep him in the game and play. However, on a game level, he was just too dangerous to my game. I could see him, he could blow anything up. And being attached to him was not good for me too, because if you want Frenchie out, then you want anyone attached to Frenchie out. And Derek not favoring me because I wanted Frenchie out, like, we had the cookout. We could not be that in love with anybody. But who am I to say? Because I fell in love with everybody. I wanted to keep everybody.
Well, I mean, Big D was talking with Frenchie about how they were the new Derek and Cody, what would have been. So
that's interesting, because what was going to happen with the cookout? But
I don't know. He went to Xavier after he talked with you about Frenchie, and he was like, I don't know if we're going to be able to keep Tiffany around too long. I don't know if she's going to be able to hold her weight here.
Wow. He wanted me out week one.
Week one.
It's very telling.
So you also talked with Azza about liking Derek. She also liked Derek. So that worked out. You also started working on Christian. And this was a very important relationship that you formed with Christian. It's one of the reasons why you were in such a powerful position for the next few weeks in the game. You talking about how you felt good about him and that you wouldn't put him up if you won. Can you tell me about your relationship with Christian? Because you really did have like a very solid hold on him. At this point in time, he doesn't trust Xavier. The person that he starts to gravitate toward is you more than anyone in the next couple of weeks. So tell me about that.
So Christian and I bonded over the fact that he shares the name of my son. My son is named Christian, and of course, Christian's name is Christian. And he's got such a loving personality, and he's so kind, and he's so genuinely sweet. I really felt bad that he was being targeted so much the first week, and I didn't think that he had done anything to deserve that. And I think it's just in my personality to be a caregiver. That's just how I am. I always want to help. I always want to make the situation better, make people feel better. Just with Christian personally, he just took a liking to me. Like, he would hug me good morning. He would hug me good night. He's like, and those are things that my son does. So it was like missing home, but having home there. And he would ask me to braid his hair, and he would talk to me, and he would ask me, questions about should he do this and what should he do. And I'm like, I know that I am in this cookout. I'm with the cookout, but I do have to have relationships with other people in this house. So I need to be protected. Christian was someone that I genuinely wanted to protect. We just had I trusted him. I knew that he would not put me up. And I knew that if I won, I did not want to put him up either. And it probably would have gone against what everybody else would have wanted. But for my own personal game, I knew that it was safer and better for me to keep him here.
Frenchie is also going to ask you at the end of the week. He says he needs some protection. And you're like, you want me to cast a rogue vote? Is that what you're asking me? You decide to do it. Now, this is it was an interesting move. I thought it was the right call when Frenchie's asking you to make this move. But there were a lot of people, it was week one, that were like, what is she doing? Why is she doing this? Tell me about the decision to follow through and cast a rogue vote for him.
I decided to cast a rogue vote for Frenchie because I wanted him to feel that he owed me. And if I was to do something for him, then he would feel indebted to me. And I also wanted to see if I could trust him. So I was going to cast the vote almost daring him to tell on me, because then that would be all the more reason for why I would want him out of the house. But I did not really want him to tell on me because, of course, that would paint a target on my back. So I was looking for a couple of things here. I was looking for us to build a relationship, for him to know, hey, I can count on Tiff. She did this for me and she didn't have to. Maybe I owe her one. I've got to keep her safe. And I told him, I said, I will only do this for you on one condition. You can never tell, because I will never tell that I cast this vote. If it ever gets out, I will know it came from you. And I meant that. And I didn't tell anybody until we actually got down to 6, because at that point it didn't matter. Or so I didn't think it mattered. It might have hurt me. But I did that to kind of build the relationship and to see. But when he went around right after the vote was cast saying he knew who did it, I was like, excuse me? That it was just like telling on me at that point.
Yeah, it was, that was Frenchie. So, okay, at the end of week 1, how do you feel in the game? Do you feel secure? Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel like you've done enough? What are your thoughts?
At the end of week 1, I feel I am a little anxious because I'm still almost attached to Frenchie, and I know he's coming out of safety. I would have felt a lot better coming out of week 1 if he had not been going around saying he knew who casted the rogue vote. It kind of made me very nervous that it was going to paint a target on me. I felt that he was going to tell at some point. I remember I did not get much sleep that night. At that point, I started wanting Frenchie gone. And so I started planting a seed there. But I did feel a little safe. I felt that I had made some connections, but I felt that I needed to separate myself from Frenchie because anybody attached to him I felt was going to be in the line of fire.
So Kylan ends up winning the week 2 HOH.
Yes.
This is obviously great for you. You're on the Queen's team. You're safe even if he wanted to target you, but obviously you're in the cookout with him. But you're also going to kind of quickly that night you're going to talk with Derek X and Claire, with the chessboard.
Oh yes, I remember.
This was very exciting for people on the feeds. The people were talking about this was one of the best nights of the feeds they've ever seen.
Oh gosh.
They loved it. You have a great quote because you basically figured out the slaughterhouse. You figured out Frenchie, and you say Frenchie's a fisherman, casting out his rod, looking for bait. And if you have your mouth open, you're gonna get caught.
Absolutely.
And you said, my mom always told me a fish could not get caught if he didn't have his mouth open. So close your mouth, open your ears, only open your mouth when the time is right, and definitely don't open it for no fucking fisherman.
No. And I meant that. Yes. I did not trust Frenchie anymore. I not for my own personal game. I trusted him some majority to keep me safe, but the way he played, I couldn't trust that. And I really wanted to keep Derek safe. And so I'm like, hey, you're going to have to separate yourself from Frenchie. We are going to have to get Kylan to realize the position that Frenchie is in. Here's the way I think that the house is set up. I think Frenchie is very protected, although he is not HOH anymore. He set himself up to have a lot of the power in the house, even though he's not HOH. We need to get Kylan to get that power from Frenchie. And I felt that the relationship that Kylan had with Derek X was so that Derek would be able to get through to him more than me, but I needed to show Derek how to have that conversation with Kylan, and that was why I used the chess pieces to do it. But Frenchie was always looking for bait, and he was looking to use people to do his work for him, and I didn't want this to be Frenchie's HOH part 2. And I really felt that he was going to try to control Kylan's HOH, so I wanted to make sure that I would before him, or that he just wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing I talked about a lot in week 2 was that, obviously week 1 HOH is like the power position. You set up the whole house for your game, but Frenchie was such a mess that week 2 was really the week 1 of the season. And Kylan was the HOH, but you kind of co-opted Kylan's power to build your own structure. And Kylan went along with it. It's something that he was okay with. He was aligned with a lot of those people, but it was ultimately a group that benefited you more than it benefited him, this ultimately the royal flush that forms. And so I know you had initially pitched, and Sarah Beth was in on this pitch as well, that it would be like you, Claire, Kylan, SB, and Derek. But eventually you expand that to include the rest of the kings, Christian and Alyssa. What made you think to include them into that sort of pitch?
Because we needed the numbers, and we were in teams at that point, and teams were just going to be safe. So for me to include one member of the team, of the Kings team, to be safe when if that person wins safety, their whole team is going to be safe. It only makes sense. Plus, the Kings were very close, and I didn't trust that they weren't all talking together. They built a strong relationship being in the have-not room that first week. I could tell coming out of that situation, they were the tightest group in the house. So I wanted to make sure that if they were telling each other anything, that we included everyone so that they didn't feel excluded and then come after us for not including them. It was just better to have them included. Plus, I liked Christian. I knew Christian had Alyssa, so it only made sense to include them all.
Mm-hmm. And you talked to Christian. I mean, another great moment of yours is talking to Christian and convincing him to come over to your side of things, telling him, you can't be a king if you're over there. Come join us and you can be a king over here. Look, Derek doesn't even want to be a king. You don't need to worry about him.
I did.
And he ate it up. He was all aboard.
He did. Oh my gosh. I remember, it's like some of these moments are just gone until you tell me about them. I'm like, yeah, that did happen. I really wanted him to see himself as a king. And how are you? There's already a king over there. Just come on over here and be a king. We'll let you run this castle. It can be, who doesn't like power? We're all power hungry in that house, and you're always looking for how to have power. So that was what I was trying to get Christian to see, is that you can have some power over here. We need you.
Mm-hmm. So you start pitching this to Kylan that, hey, we should do kings, queens plus one ace. And he's on board. It's again, including a lot of people that he likes and trusts. And so you push this throughout the week, this alliance. You really wanted either Frenchie or Brent to leave. Kylan at this point seemed like he was kind of still trying to hold on to the remnants of Slaughterhouse. He was talking to you about, like, maybe I can work with Frenchie, maybe I can work with Brent and Whitney still. But you were like, you can't work with this man. And then when Frenchie blew up the Slaughterhouse and he told everyone about it, you were like, look what's happening. Like, you really think, you really think this is going to work out. All of this stuff is happening. Things are really working out in your favor this week. Christian and Alyssa are getting closer together. They start talking to you about what do you think? Do people think we're a showman? This is really when you took firm control of the game. Were you aware of that? Like, were you like, this feels good?
I felt good with my relationships in the house. I'm not going to say I felt that I had taken any control of the game. I just really did feel comfortable that other people felt comfortable with me. And that was my whole strategy, is to make people feel comfortable with me. If you feel comfortable, you feel safe and you have an ally. And I needed them to trust me that I would keep them safe. So when Christian and Alyssa were coming to me about their relationship, I wanted to be someone who was on their side. Because if you're not on their side, or you're not encouraging them, then they're like, oh, this person's against me. Maybe they're going to try to get me out. So I was always like, girl, that's your man. Do what you got to do. Don't worry about it. I'm here for it.
And you also start pitching the idea of like a potential Final Four with Christian and Alyssa. At this point, you talked to Christian about it, and then he pitched it to Alyssa, and she was like, "Yes, this is a great idea with Claire."
Myself and Claire. Yes,
Claire. And that was again like very key here, because they're starting to warm up to Xavier. Christian talked to you a little bit about, like, is Xavier maybe a little bit jealous of me and Alyssa? But they were coming around on him. But they still didn't really want to go to the end with him.
Okay.
And they were looking for, like, who do we actually want to go to the end with? And it landed on you, and they were like, who's going to expect us to be working with Tiffany and Claire? And this is, of course, huge, because if Derek X is not able to get Christian out, the fact that you and Claire were in so tight with him and Alyssa, and even just if you had decided to go a different route, right? This would have been very valuable.
Right. One or the other.
Yeah, right. So at the time, when you're making this, and you hadn't solidified it yet, it's going to be a while till you really solidify it. But they were basically operating as though you had this deal for a while, because you hadn't solidified the cookouts plan yet. Were you thinking this is a great way of, like, potentially moving into the end? Because from my perspective, it seemed like, because the cookout wasn't like a final six at this time.
It was not.
It was more like, at this time, it was starting to come around to like, maybe let's get everyone a jury.
Yeah.
And then we'll have the jury votes. And if that were the case, then like you bringing Christian as far as you wanted wouldn't really matter, because even if he did comp out, like brought you to the end, you'd still probably beat him in the jury vote. Was that, what was your long-term planning at this point?
Really, just a matter of protecting myself in case the 6 didn't make it to 6. I did not want to be targeted. So I figured if Alyssa and Christian felt that we were working together, then they would keep me safe. I know how those duos and showmances go, so I never expected that Christian or Alyssa would choose me over choosing each other. But I did want them to feel that they should keep me with them as long as they could. So I wasn't looking on really going with them to 4, but I wanted them to feel that I was going with them to 4.
You also got a lot closer to Hannah, I think, over the course of this week. You talked about being very impressed with her. Was there anything specifically that she did, or was it just over the course of your conversations?
Just in speaking with Hannah, I realized that she may be 21, but this is a very mature young woman. Just her thought process, I would explain something to Hannah, something where I needed to, or I felt that I needed to use figures or diagrams to show someone, to paint a picture. Hannah was getting it like this. And the fact that she was understanding my thought process so quickly, she gained a lot of respect from me. I was listening to her conversations, and I'm saying, wow, this young woman at 21 is in a wonderful position in her life, even outside of this house. So I developed a real, true, genuine love and admiration for her, to where I just wanted to make sure that she was going to be safe in that house. Actually, in that time, I didn't think that Hannah could keep herself safe. I didn't know that she was strategizing and as like the way that she did. I just started to respect the way that she thought. And she was really the only person that I could talk to about my gameplay and the level of gameplay that I wanted to play at, and she was right there with me. So we bonded over just strategic minds. We were just thinking alike. That just helped us stay together.
And so the Royal Flush is formed, is named. You also make the Mafia.
Brent made the Mafia.
And that was very real in his all next week he's gonna be like, the Mafia's gonna come through.
I could not believe it. That really blew my mind. I was like, what do we name it? What do we name what? Oh, this is a thing. Oh man, I thought he was playing us. Honestly, I thought he was playing us like we were playing him. I thought he was playing us with an alliance, like dangling a carrot in front of us and expecting us to think it was true. I did not know that he believed it was real.
Oh, he believed it was real. Yeah. I mean, at this point, you the queens are at the complete center of the game. I mean, you've got the kings on one side, you've got the aces on the other side, and the jokers are the jokers at this point. You have a conversation with Kyland about like really like let's have a serious conversation. Like, I really think that we should be working together. I really respect you. It seems like you're one of the few people that actually listens to me and knows who I am. And you eventually solidify that final 2 in the next week. You call it the Connect. But Kylan does at this point, he talks to the cameras and he says that he recognizes you as the biggest threat in the game. But one that's great for his game because you're working with him, and he thinks that's a great thing. Kyland and Derek X both are kind of like the two people who are the most wary of you, in the sense that like they trusted you, but they knew how good you were.
Oh my gosh, I really thought I was just playing it down. What in the world?
Most other people were
at this game.
were on board with that, but again, like, they trusted you. Like, they never actually made a move against you, or like Derek X didn't. And Kylan didn't make a move against you because he didn't trust you. So Frenchie ends up going out. It's a fairly uneventful. Brent is the next target. The idea is that the aces are going to throw the competition. They do so. Xavier wins. You're happy about this. Everything's going according to plan. You're looking at targeting Whitney next. This was interesting to me because Whitney in the game at this point is pretty lost. I mean, she's looking for anybody, and she really does want to work with the women, but she has been very passive about like telling the women she wants to work with the women.
I honestly was clueless that Whitney wanted to work with the women.
Yeah, and that was the problem. But I mean, she was also still kind of attached to this old regime of the slaughterhouse, and even though she wanted Brent out, she was still very like linked to him publicly. And she was also somebody who, despite wanting to work with the women, she was ultimately somebody who would go to the kings and be like, let's take out the queens. And then she'd go to the queens and be like, let's take out the kings. And she was more so with the queens than the kings, but she was the kind of player that would go to both sides.
I felt that. I could feel that about her, yes.
So you're looking at Brent this week. It's a fairly easy week, and you're looking at Whitney next week. Something that you did, like, you were really the main driver when it came to these early targets. You were very effective at making people the house target. A lot of it came with you beat it over the head with a hammer over and over until it just was reality.
I just planted little seeds. Like, I asked questions. What do you think about this person? Everyone came to these conclusions about these targets on their own. I just helped them critically think about people in the way that I thought about them.
Yes. Well, let's skip over some of this week's events to get to, because it's at some point this week that you really start to you know that Kylan tells you that Sarah Beth has told him about Jackpot. Claire has been talking to you about not trusting Kylan, and you really go full on sort of against Sarah Beth. I think a lot of that happens in the following week, but the first real burst of it was SBJ.
Oh yeah.
Sarah Beth Jury, which was like, oh, okay, so she's targeting Sarah. Like, the question was, does she actually believe that this is a conspiracy, that she is America's player, or like
yes.
or is she just using this to put a target on her back?
I believed it.
Yes.
As Sarah Beth was playing first of all, she came in very sweet, very quiet, very subdued. I actually liked that, and I noticed that nobody was like pulling her in. So I figured this girl is probably very smart, and she doesn't want anyone to know that. So I wanted to get her on my side. I noticed that she was playing such a low-key game, and America always has influence in these games, and it's America's game. So I'm wondering, like, is there an America's player? Is there an America's sweetheart? What is going on? And she was so quiet in this SBJ thing, and I'm like, is she America's sweetheart? Is she going to get some money? Like, wait a minute. I mean, you have nothing to think about in this house. There's so many conspiracies. You can drive yourself crazy with trying to figure out what is really going on. So I genuinely thought that she might be America's sweetheart, or there was some kind of duo twist or something, because her and Kylan were getting very close at this time. And I'm like, is she going to get some money? So I could not figure out why she was playing the game the way she was. It was the most chillest game I had ever seen. And everybody else is around here running around like crazy, I'm strategizing, I'm planting seeds. And she's over there like, I'm like, she is not worried about anything. Why is she not worried about anything? How are you so comfortable in this house? I'm like, somebody's keeping her safe. She's got immunity or something. I don't know. I had no idea.
Yeah, well, I mean, Sarah Beth was an interesting player, because when she did turn it on, like in week 2, when she approached the Kings about the slaughterhouse, she was pretty effective. And then during Christian's HOH, she really like out argues Xavier at every turn when it comes to targeting Hannah. But she was a player who like would turn it on and be very aggressive.
I got to see that
way back. And she said to the cameras after she locked everything in with with Royal Flush and with Kylan and stuff in week 2, she's like, now we got to lie low for a while.
Okay.
And I ultimately think that was like her biggest downfall in the game was that it was either 0 or 100.
Yeah.
And so it was definitely interesting. And so Xavier's HOH, he nominates Brent and Brittany, and this is when you really start to get into it with Azza because of the wild card competition. and how it goes down, where Brittany loses, and Oz is upset about how Brittany lost because it seemed like you and Derek X were teaming up against her, and that wasn't really what it seemed to be. There was a lot of like talk about like you had promised or said to Brittany that you would work with her against Derek X right before the competition, and then you ended up working with Derek X instead. So how did that go down? Did Brittany, because I think Brittany said that she asked you like, hey, like let's work together against him, and you were like, sure, like yes.
So that is actually what happened. But when she retold the story in the house, it was Tiffany told me we were going to target Derek X. Now, I did not verbally say anything. I made it a point of not being the one to initiate something. Like if you said something, I'd agree to it. I was kind of playing Xavier's game in the beginning. Like, you know, you tell me and then I'll agree, but you won't be able to say I said anything. So Xavier pulled me into the HOH room before we had the wild card comp, and he says, you have to win. And I said, okay, well then that's it. Then I've got to win. We don't know what the wild card comp is, but I know I've got to go out there and compete to win. So Derek X lets me know whatever it is, he'll work with me. He does not want to win it because he doesn't know how this is going to affect the safety of his team, and we wanted Brent out. So I know he doesn't want to win it. Brittany and I, of course, are in Kingslayers. Brittany has been on the block the week before. I know she does not want to be on the block, and she wants me to help her to stay safe. But I've got another agenda here, and my loyalty at that moment is to Xavier. And if he's telling me I need to do what I need to do to win, then I need to do what I need to do to win. Well, when we get out right before the comp, Brittany looks at me and she goes, "We're going after him," and I'm like, And so, you know, I know she believed that I was in there with her, but I knew that she couldn't win because I figured that Xavier was going to use her as a pawn. I knew she needed to be free as a pawn. So when Derek and I are out there and we get across, he lets me know, like, we got to take her out first. And I'm like, we got to take her out first. I got to deal with the consequences later. And that's what happened.
Yeah. And so afterwards, Azah is upset about it. You have a couple of conversations with her trying to explain what happened, but the two sort of communication styles and sort of, I think, approaches to the game even, it just didn't really mesh very well. I think Azah really came from a very sort of like collectivist viewpoint of like, you know, like we're all supposed to be included and we're all supposed to be in the know and we're all supposed to be working collectively as a group in a certain direction. And you know, you were a much more individual player, which isn't to say necessarily selfish, but you sort of approached your contribution to the cookout, it felt from my perspective at least, as like, I am individually contributing here. This is what I needed to do. It seemed like it just wasn't meshing in these conversations. You eventually get kind of back on track with Azah later in the game, but particularly with Azah, and then of course a lot with Big D. It just seemed like the relationships just weren't in great places. And usually, if that's the case in Big Brother, especially when you're in a position like you are, you kind of like, okay, so next week
we're getting this person. See, that week with Azah and the wild card comp and Brittany, she wanted to know why I played the way I played, and I honestly felt that it was not my responsibility to reveal to her when she felt that everyone should be working together collectively. Then Xavier, who was the head of household, should have been informing you of his plan that he wanted me to win. And because I knew that she didn't have that information, and I could tell that she didn't have that information because she would have told me Xavier's plan, I didn't want to throw him under the bus. So I ended up taking a lot of heat for things because I would not expose other people's game. But Xavier came to me and told me he wanted me to win. If we're supposed to be doing things collectively, then Xavier should have let his plan be known to other members of the cookout as well. It's not my responsibility to tell Xavier's gameplay to Azah just because she doesn't understand why I played the way I played. And I told her, it's not aired on the show because I actually did see that episode, but a lot of it was cut out. But I told her, hey, I played to win. I was told I needed to play to win. I played to win. And however that win came about is how it was going to come about. She didn't like that I was targeting Brittany, but I felt that obviously you know that we are in this cookout situation. Whether I'm targeting Brittany or not, I wasn't targeting you. So I did not understand why she was so upset with me, because every single move that I made was for the cookout. It was not against anyone else, but just because you're for something doesn't mean you're against something else. So I could not understand the energy that was being projected to me about making sure that we were making plans to move further. But at that point, I realized that not everybody believed that we were going to get there. So people were still definitely playing their own individual game.
Mm-hmm. So I think an interesting thing when I was looking back at your game and trying to like evaluate it, I think ultimately we look at sort of like the biggest flaws, so to speak, would be ultimately the relationship with Azah, which was kind of rocky, and then obviously with Big D. And it was interesting to me, because your relationship with Xavier also kind of fell apart. That basically it was only the members of the cookout that you ever sort of struggled to, because like everybody outside of the cookout, even when you were fully against them, like with Sarah Beth, you were against Sarah Beth from week 3 onward. And when she won that HOH, she was like, the person I feel most comfortable with is Tiffany. So for whatever reason, everybody outside of the cookout, you were able to just completely have them. But when it came to your relationships in the cookout, you weren't always able to keep those in check. Was that just the personalities in the cookout, or was there something unique to how you saw them because of the alliance that you had that ultimately sort of like influenced how you interacted with them?
Oh gosh, that is such a loaded question. I am always a person who is a peace at all costs type of person. I will admit I'm wrong even when I'm not. I will just try to make peace. I do not like confrontation. I don't like conflict. And I don't know why my relationships in the cookout were so contentious. I don't know if it was because they viewed me as, maybe they saw me making these relationships with people outside of the house and maybe feeling like maybe my jury management was going to be better than theirs. I don't know. I just think that Big D just he didn't like me from week 1. And because him and Azah were so close, and Azah and I did not have the same gameplay, I think that both of them together decided we just can't work with her on the capacity that she's able to work with everyone else, and that we're able to work with everyone else. And I just don't think I was given a chance. They spent a lot of time together, and they're probably not going to like that. That's how I feel about it. But I do feel that because they spent so much time together, he was such a great influence on her game. I think that because he didn't like me, and that her and I did not always see eye to eye in our gameplay, I think they both just came together like it's just a no for us with Tiff. And Xavier was right there too. So really it was just all I ever had was Kyland and Chada. I never felt that X really trusted me to work with me like that, because I know that he could see I was willing to make moves. I was the one who they were not able to control, and I stand by that. So, that became a liability for them. I always knew that I wasn't at the top of the 6. I always knew I was at the bottom.
We're back.
We're back.
Yes. Okay. We just had a bit of an intermission there, but we are now back. We're gonna continue from where we left off.
Yeah.
Okay. So we were in week 3.
Yeah.
Xavier's HOH. He's taken out Brent. This is the week where you form the detectives.
Okay.
It's you, Derek X, Tiffany, Claire, and Kylan.
Yes.
And this really seems like probably one of the main groups that would have been the power of the house, if not for the decision to go with the cookout, which comes very soon. But what were your thoughts on the detectives?
I really like the detectives. I always like working with Derek. I always like working with Claire. Claire and Kai and I were on the same team. We were on the Queen's team. We were down a player, so that was it. Derek X has always been with us at that point, and so we just made it solidified an alliance together so that Derek X felt safe. I don't think Derek felt safe with anybody in the house as much as he felt safe with us, and so so that we could keep that trust going, we just went on ahead and made it a thing, as well as Claire understanding that we were all working together, because she wasn't really trusting Kai so much. Even though we were in the Queens, we were a team that had to be together. Forming the detectives kind of lowered her anxiety about Kai.
Mm-hmm. So Claire has been talking to you about not trusting Kyland. The jackpot has been exposed by SB. You formed the detectives. It seems like it reaches a boiling point. And you call in the aces and you have this big meeting about like going after the Kings. Derek X is like, yeah, let's get out Xavier. And it seems like this might be the direction that the game is going in. But then the following morning, you wake up. You said I couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
You talk about a dream. You talk about this song that you heard, and you have decided. And this is something that you've been struggling with. You've talked to the cameras about it. Like, I don't know where to go from here. Like, is America gonna hate me if I go this way? Can I go that way? But it all comes together in this one night. The master plan, the plan for the rest of the game. Tell me not only like the thought process for the plan, because we all know the plan now, but the thought process for yourself, in terms of, this direction for your game. It's not necessarily the direction that you naturally would have gravitated toward, but it's the direction that you're going to go in. Just walk me through that decision.
I was struggling that night when we talked to the aces, because I wanted to build alliances around myself, that people that would keep me safe. I knew Brent was leaving. I knew I wanted to keep Claire. I knew I trusted DX. But I also knew that the cookout, at that time, the cookout was still pretty much in agreement. It was an understanding. We were, to say an alliance, we were, but I wasn't sold on the fact that we were actually going to be successful in the mission of getting us all to the end. So I wanted to build relationships with other people outside of the six to make sure that I was still going to be safe. That night, I started realizing this is becoming hard. I've got alliances all over this house. At some point, I'm going to have to turn on someone, and I don't want them to distrust me. So I laid in bed that night, and I'm trying to figure out what to do, because the six doesn't even have a plan at this point to get us further ahead. And so, especially to move so covertly and to move through these teams that we've already established. And so, when I got up that morning, I cried myself to sleep that night. It was an emotional night for me, because I felt like I can't make a decision on how to move forward in this game when I'm being pulled in two totally different directions. And then when I got up, Money Can't Buy You Love was in my head, and I'm like, so what does that mean? And I started thinking, like, Tiff, you could win the $750,000, or you could play your game to win this money, and you still may not even win it. And then you lose the respect of the other players in the house that were in the six, the other five. And then you maybe even lose America's respect, or the people who were actually going for this idea, this mission that you had. I didn't want to be the person to split it, to kill the dream. So that was a lot of pressure that was on me for my own personal gain. And so I pulled those chess pieces out again, just to try to see, like, okay, it is six of us, and how can we actually do this? And people were talking about getting people in duos. Well, Alyssa and Christian are a pair. And I'm like, well, let's just embrace this duo thing. Like, what if we embrace the duos, make everybody a duo? Then whoever is a duo is not targeted. And then whoever is a duo and they are targeted, they'll be targeted with their person. So that moment that I woke up and I was able to see the plan, which we now refer to as the master plan, I decided that it was going to be the cookout for me, and that was the way I was going to go in the game.
Mm-hmm. So when you came up with the idea, when you pitched the idea, you had a specific boot order for it.
I did.
Was there at that point an end game in mind that you were looking specifically at, like, okay, this is how I get the cookout to six, but this is also how I win the game?
Yes. So during that week, Kyland and I already had solidified our final two, which Hannah and I had not had a final two at that time. And so I was looking at the pairs, and I was looking at Ozza and Big D already seemed to be so close. I expected them to want to take each other to the end. I didn't want anyone to take Big D to the end because I knew if someone took Big D to the end, then they were going to win it. So I was hoping that if Ozza and Big D were going to stay together, then we could get Big D out at 6. And then Chada and Xavier already seemed like they had a bond. But even if they didn't, I knew that I was more so connected with Kylan. So I wanted to see Kylan and I in the final 2. I thought that Kylan and I could sit in the final 2 together. I trusted him bringing me, and I definitely wanted to bring him. So essentially, I figured that the final 4 would be Kylan, myself, Xavier, and Chada. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and then we get rid of them and we sit in the final 2.
Were you worried about the end game competitions at that point?
Yes, of course I was worried about the end game competitions because I had not studied, even though I'm a Big Brother fan, I just love to watch and I love the strategy and the socializing and the manipulation aspect. But when I started thinking about those competitions at the end, I'm like, hold on now, there's some mental comps in here and there's some mental math. And I was like, I definitely got to stick to the people who know the mental math, right? So
start getting lessons from them?
Yes. Well, at first my thing was, I use the Henry Ford effect. I may not know everything, but I'll employ everybody around me who does. That way I don't have to know. I've got people who do know. And so that was like Derek X. I knew he had a great social game. He was very smart. I knew Kylan could win competitions. Everything was strategic and why I wanted certain people to work directly with me because I knew that they could win the things that I probably couldn't win and then they would keep me safe.
Mm-hmm. Well, the funny thing is that like when you came up with this plan, I remember the day because it was definitely an abrupt shift in where the direction the game was going, and a lot of people were still kind of like, is Tiffany doing too much?
Yeah, I was doing a lot. Seriously.
And so it was kind of like, is this going to stick was one of the questions. Like, is this just, one of the sort of like turns that's going to end up turning again? And I think that, at the time I was talking about like, this doesn't seem like the optimal path for Tiffany, but it definitely can work. And so from that point forward, I think, again, I know we've talked about this a little bit, but like it was hard to analyze individual games in a sense because everything that you would normally say about an individual's game kind of had to go out the window since you have to look at the motivation of the player.
Yes.
And if the motivation of the player isn't to win first, get the alliance there second, and then is it necessarily bad gameplay, at least for this season, for this motivation, for them to play more for the group than for themselves? And what was interesting is that, as we'll talk about it, you actually do get to a point where you sort of did almost accomplish that path, but then things didn't quite work out. But we'll get there. Okay, so this is when you pitch the idea to Ozza and Big D, and Ozza just isn't really having it.
Which I did. The plan?
Yes, because she was just like, because after this is when, and you might have seen it in the episodes if you've gotten this far, that Big D has this whole thing with Ozza where like, you just gotta fake it. You just gotta put a smile on.
I haven't seen that yet. To my face. So let me go back. I was so excited about the plan when I figured it out. I really wanted to talk to Kylan about it first, but Kylan, as always, is in the bathroom brushing his teeth. But I didn't want to pull him because I didn't want it to seem obvious, and I figured Claire was in there too, so I wanted to wait until he would come up alone. And so I was so excited about it, I had to talk to somebody. So I ended up talking to the Jokers first, which was Ozza and Big D. So I go in their room and I don't take the chessboard, but I know that we usually don't agree on many things. But I wanted to present it to them to see how they felt about about it, but I did not go into a lot of detail. But I just kind of verbally said to them, like, hey, if we pair ourselves up with this, like this, and this person has this person, you guys have this person, whatever, and then we sit on the block next to them, then we have the numbers to stay. They were talking to me and agreeing with me as if they understood and they agreed. Now, in that moment, I'm thinking, I don't know if they're following me or not. And I really did feel like they could just be saying, yes, okay, just because it's whatever when it comes to me. So I did feel that. But when they reiterated it back to me, they fully understood what I was saying. So I'm like, okay, sounds good. Sounds like a plan. I left the room. Don't know how they took it. Did not honestly really care because they were only two. And I knew if I could get Kai, Xavier, and Chada to be on the same page as me, then we were going to go with that plan and they would just follow. And so then I finally got Kai, and then him and I went through it and he fully understood what I was saying. Mm-hmm. But I was not sure if Azza and Big D fully understood, were willing, and accepted the plan at all. But I knew if the other three, and it was four of us that were following the plan, what choice did they have?
Yeah, I think their response was mostly just like, how is this new? Like this is what we should be doing. Like, anyway.
Oh, okay.
Like, why is she acting like this is a big change? But I mean, it was.
But you know what? I didn't go through with them.
Exactly,
I didn't go through everything, and I didn't go through the process of evictions with them because I knew that, or I felt that they might see me as trying to control things too much, and they would not want me to have that control. They wouldn't want to go along with my ideas. So I just gave them like a real generic overview of the plan. But only to Kai did I really lay out like, this is how we need to evict people. And then even Hannah came in later, and Hannah's like, I've run down some scenarios. I've run down 60 scenarios. I'm like, 60 scenarios? Girl, I came up with 6. What do you mean 60? And that's when I mean, like, every time I talked to her, my level of respect for her just kept going higher and higher. And I'm like, okay, she's really thought this through. So we had to really think through our processes of eviction so we could make sure who went to jury, how they went to jury, who went to jury together, who could possibly come back for a battle back. Those things I never discussed with Big D and Azza. I just didn't feel like they would be receptive to me anyway. Those things were really discussed in detail with Chada, and then Kai more so next, and Xavier. I just didn't feel that he was as receptive to me either. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember because Xavier was at this time, because at this point, Hannah had been pitching that Alyssa should go because she kind of felt like she would be able to control Christian if Alyssa was gone. And so the initial pitch included Alyssa being targeted.
And I agreed with that too, but not for the control of her, of Christian, but I knew that they were showmans. And I've seen it when you split the couple up and the guy goes and the girl stays, like she's got this vendetta. And I'm like, I don't want to leave her in the house, and she's going after everyone.
Mm-hmm. And so I remember Xavier being like, actually, I think Christian should go first. And at that point, he was saying he felt like Claire should be the last to go. Of course, he kind of changes his mind on both of those counts, but you talk to Hannah and you run through scenarios, and you're now encouraging, like, okay, you need to get closer to DX. And I talked to Derek about this a little bit in his interview about how, you would tell Hannah to tell him things, and you would tell him things, and then Hannah would go and tell him things, and he'd be like, are you Tiffany?
Hannah, switch the wording around like just a little bit.
Yeah, you're copying the homework word for word here.
Word for word. It's plagiarizing, Hannah.
But this is now in motion. Brent goes out, and Christian wins the next HOH. Now, there had been a lot of potential movement to target the Kings, especially from, Derek had been pushing that, Whitney had been pushing it, and you were playing up the, the whole thing with the aces and how the Kings should be targeted. Again, a lot of that was Alyssa, but you had also talked about switching it to Christian potentially. But Christian ends up winning, and his plan is to target Hannah, which stemmed from conversations the previous week with Xavier, Sarah Beth, and Alyssa. And this is the most dangerous time for the cookout because if Hannah is the target, then you guys are going to have to expose yourselves with the vote to save her. And so Xavier is trying to do everything he can to convince Christian and Alyssa, but he's getting shot down by Sarah Beth pretty much every time he makes some progress. They talk to Sarah Beth, and it slams, the door slams shut again. You get in there and you try to turn them onto Brittany a little bit. You actually made some progress in the whole like royal flush meeting that you guys had. But again, Sarah Beth is like in there and shuts it down. And then after you guys leave, she gets in again and she's like, no, it has to be Hannah. How frustrating was this for you when because Sarah Beth was like really going for it.
She was gunning for Hannah, and I had not. It was interesting because I felt that she had that type of, I felt that she had that fire in her. I knew she was very quiet and subdued and very sweet the whole time we had been in the house. But I knew that there was a fire that was inside of Sarah Beth, and I did not want it to come out on me. And so when I saw that fire come out for Hannah, I was like, that's what I was waiting for. I knew that this girl had some fire in her, and when she's determined, she's determined. And she was so determined in looking at Hannah, and I was like, well, I'm not going to defend Hannah. I'm not going to say anything about Hannah. I am not going to put myself and Hannah together to SB or anyone in the Kings team. What I will do is try to deflect and get them to look at someone else. But it was very frustrating for her to go after Hannah so hard, and then that made Sarah Beth become my target. Yes, because she was targeting Hannah, but also because of how determined she was to get Hannah out.
She was very determined. Claire ends up winning the wild card competition. She's now going to be safe until jury. I know you were very concerned about keeping Claire safe. A couple of people had brought up her name here and there, but that must have been a relief.
It was. I never wanted Claire to leave. I wanted Claire to stay as long as I could keep her. I used to tell Claire, Claire, first of all, you look too strong. You need to put on some sweatpants and your back hurts. She's like, should I walk with a limp? I'm like, no, you don't walk with a limp because it would be too obvious. But you have to appear weaker, Claire. You cannot let these guys think that you're this strong. So Claire actually wore sweats for a long time.
Yeah. Hannah is the one ultimately that she talks to Christian and Alyssa both, reminds them of the relationship that she had built with them. And they've decided, okay, we do want to target Whitney. And obviously big mistake on their part. But it's around this time as well that you seem to have moved away from Kyland and more toward Hannah. And I think you told the cameras at one point, like, hey, Hannah is now my official final two. And no more Kyland.
Because she was so with me. And there was never a doubt in my mind that she was with me. And she would come to me and we would go through scenarios and we would talk about the future plans. And we would, we talked about so much. How could I not feel a trust in a relationship and wanting to get to the end with her? Kylan and I had a final two, but it was a spoken agreement. He never came to me to talk any game. Every moment and every movement he made included Sarah Beth. So I didn't feel connected to him. I can't make decisions. I can't think. I can't strategize if we're not talking. And so Hannah had really got in there and built that relationship with me to where I felt like, why am I promising this final two with Kylan when we don't have anything, But Hannah is over here doing all the work with me. Let's get to the end.
And from this point forward, because you had talked, was there ever a point where you considered bringing Claire all the way to the end, early on?
Oh yeah, when I didn't believe that the cookout was actually going to make it, Claire was with me. Like if it could have been me, Claire, and Hannah, that's what it would have been. Me, Claire, Hannah, DX. That was like always what I wanted. Like I could not see that it wasn't going to be. But then when I decided and I chose the cookout, I was like, well, I know this relationship with Claire and this thing that I have with Claire is going to be short-lived.
So it was kind of Claire and then Kyland and then Hannah, and then it kind of was always Hannah from that point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The danger here with Hannah up on the block, even though she's no longer the target, is that if Whitney wins the veto, Ozza was the intended replacement, which would obviously be much worse than even Hannah being the target. So luckily, though, Christian ends up winning the veto. He's not going to use it. And you are spending much of this week doing your Sarah Beth campaign now that she's officially on the outs here. America's player.
Yes.
America's
America's
couple.
sweetheart. Yes. I'm like, she's America's sweetheart. Her and Kylan are America's couple. You couldn't tell me anything.
You got X on board.
I did.
You had Derek on board for a little while. Obviously Hannah and Claire. You'd started working on Ozza. Big D even got on board with the Let's Target Sarah
Big
Beth.
D said her name to me before I did. Like we were just outside on the patio talking, and I'm like, "Who don't you trust?" And he was like, "Sarah Beth." I was like, "Ooh, something we agree on."
Yes. So it's around this time as well that you and Ozza, again, you've had a little bit of a disagreement in the previous week, and now this week she disagrees about targeting Sarah Beth, and she also disagrees about the inclusion of Hannah in the cookout. At this point, she's going to have a conversation with Big D about like why do you keep saying the 6? It's not the 6, it's the 5. And it really seems to like come down to it here. But it's also this time that Hannah learns the name of the cookout because Ozza drops it to her. Tell me about this, because this was again like just another week of this relationship with Ozza just not clicking.
I had no idea that Ozza was not including Hannah in the 6. I had been saying the 6 the whole time. So, and I'm not even aware of the conversation that she had with Big D saying, "Why are you saying the 6? It's only the 5." I just saw on the episode that I watched last night that she says, "Well, I thought it was the 5 plus Hannah." Well, the 5 plus Hannah equals 6. But, I didn't know that she was so against her being in the cookout. And so when she said that to me, that she didn't trust Hannah and she wanted Hannah gone at 6, I was really confused about why. I did not know what had happened there. She said that she didn't talk game to her, and that's legitimate. And so I was uncomfortable with the relationship, and because I wanted us all 6 to work as closely together as we could, because I knew how important the mission was, and it was important for us all to be on the same page, I did mention to Hannah, like, you need to work on your relationship with Ozza. She just doesn't feel the closeness there. I don't think she trusts you as much. You need to talk to her. And then Ozza, of course, put together that I had mentioned it to Hannah, that information that Ozza had given to me. And I just knew then that Ozza was completely done talking to me. It's like, and then I started getting concerned because I really like her as a person, and I felt a sisterhood with her, and I did not want the game to interfere with our personal relationship. So I made a decision that I was just not going to discuss my game moves and game with Ozza, because I did not want that to come in between our real relationship. I wanted us to be able to leave the house and still be friends, and I didn't feel that it was going to be that way if we talked, because when we would not agree, it created tension. Instead of just saying, "Oh, okay, Taran, well, I don't agree with that," and then us being able to move forward with something else, it just, you could just feel the tension there. Only later did it become, I think we feel different about that, and I would go, okay, that's fine, but oh gosh, we were like two magnets that they just won't connect.
So at the end of this week, this is, when you and Kylan in week 2 had built up, the royal flush, and it was looking like he was doing very well and you were doing very well. It seemed for a while that it was going to be the two of you kind of running the game, and it was like, but when are they going to turn on each other? When are they going to be battling for power in the game? And then after that, for much of Xavier's reign, and then for a lot of Christian's HOH reign, it seemed like, okay, maybe Kylan isn't going to have that much influence because it doesn't seem like he's been super active. But then at the end of this week, he kind of comes back, and he starts working on Derek to say, you shouldn't target Sarah Beth. If you're going to target somebody on the Kings, it should be Christian. And this is kind of the first big blow to what you've built, because Sarah Beth leaving is much better for your game than Christian leaving, with or without the cookout. And so when Derek comes to you saying, hey, I'm kind of feeling like if I win, I have to take that shot at Christian. What are your thoughts?
For my own personal game, I did not want him to take a shot at Christian, but I don't view myself as being a selfish person. I try to be objective and look at the other side. And when I looked at the position that Derek was in, he was completely right. And I told him that. I said, you got to go with your gut here. And if you get the opportunity to take your shot, regardless of what I want you to do, I don't want you to take a shot at Christian. But if you get the opportunity, you have to look at timing and you have to go ahead and take your shot. And he happened to get his shot. Of course, I wanted Sarah Beth out. I wanted him to get Sarah Beth out. And when I look at it now, hindsight is 2020, it was not the best move for the cookout. But I did want Christian to stay because of my own personal game, because I felt that he would be closer to me than her. But I did feel that I could not be selfish with Derek, and I wanted him to do what I wanted him to do. But I would have felt bad if he had not taken that shot and Christian had the opportunity to take the shot at him and then Derek left because of Christian. So I'm like, hey, let's just see how it plays out. If the opportunity comes, the opportunity knocks, then you have to open the door. And that's what he did.
When did you start to realize that maybe it was, maybe Kylan was in his ear about this?
Because Kylan was always waiting in the checkerboard room for Derek to go to his room. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why do you need to talk to him now? Like Kylan would wait for Derek to go to the room, and then he would go in there and he would talk to him. He would talk to him. And I'm like, Derek, you can't listen to these people. Okay. Like they're going to try to make you do what they want you to do. Even though I am one that is wanting him to do what I want him to do, but I'm different.
Okay, well, Derek does win this HOH.
Yes.
And he wants to go after Christian. Now, he kind of, goes around in some circles when he talks to people. He has different, he changes his mind a couple of times, but ultimately, the idea is Sarah Beth on the block with a potential Christian backdoor if the veto goes right. You do fight him on this, as you talked about. But you also, you say to the cameras, like, look, everything you just said, like, I can't fight him too hard. I don't want to get in the way of his own game.
Yeah.
And so, as the week progresses, it's looking worse and worse. You do try to give Alyssa a heads up, like you can't use, if you win this veto, you can't use it.
Listen, I was trying. It was hard. I was playing both sides of the fence over here. It was tough. I'm like, don't make any promises, Alyssa.
But ultimately, Brittany wins the veto and Christian gets backdoored. And this was actually not only bad for your game because, you lost a very valuable piece on the board that is very loyal to you. You have solidified your final four with Christian and Alyssa with Claire at this point. You've been talking about bringing in a fifth, whether it's Hannah or Xavier. And they are very loyal to this. They have tried to make a deal with Hannah and Derek X, but that was just for their own protection. And so, but it's also dangerous to you because of this Final Four with Christian on the block. This is a time where a lot of Big Brother players might get into some trouble because their allies are going up, and it's like, what are you doing for me? What's going on? Aren't you going to vote for me? Like, what's happening? And so you have to do a lot of damage control here, which ultimately leads to another, blow up with the Jokers, even before the vote flip situation. So walk me through this.
So Alyssa and Christian, of course, feel, why do we have this Final Four with you if we don't have your vote? And I'm telling them, you can have our vote. And even if me and Claire do vote to keep Christian, he still doesn't have that third vote to stay, because regardless of what anyone from the Jokers team is telling you, I know that none of them are going to vote for Christian to stay. I knew that they were telling that the Jokers were saying to, and whoever from the Jokers, and I'll just be clear, I knew that Azza was not giving Christian a vote. That part I knew. But I knew that Derek had told Christian that he was going to vote for him, because Derek told me that out of his mouth immediately after Christian was nominated. And I knew that Brittany said that she would vote for him, but I knew that neither one of them were going to vote for him. So he never had that fifth vote. And so, I wanted them to understand that us voting, which is me and Claire voting for Christian, would only expose us to the house and have them turned against us, whereas they felt that we were the house. Mm-hmm. And so I'm saying to Brittany, okay, you have to tell them that you pushed me into a corner. I did say I would vote, but hey, I'm looking at this and it's not looking good for you. So I don't know that I want to show my cards in that way. But that was something I guess she was just never comfortable saying to Christian. And so Christian always believed that he had Brittany's vote. Well, by the time it came down to Christian's pitch to me, which I always wanted SB gone. So the fact that she's on the block and I can get her out, when Christian pitches to me in the have not room the morning that I decided, like, wait a minute, I might want to flip this vote, I went to Xavier because I wanted to know, like, hey, what do you want to do? And for some odd reason, I felt an allegiance to Xavier to find out what we were going to do about Christian, because Christian was pitching so hard. I'm like, you do realize the things that he's saying. He says this to suit to too many people. He might get the votes to stay. I don't even know. But we actually had the numbers, so he shouldn't have had the votes to stay. But I wanted to know what Xavier felt. Xavier says, I want to keep him. I'm like, oh, okay, well, let's see what Claire has to say about that. And I knew we needed one more vote. Claire and I decided we wanted to keep him. We just needed Brittany, and I could have gotten Brittany to vote for him. Mm-hmm.
So you talked to Xavier, you talked to Claire, you even talked to Derek about it. You're like, hey, we might have to flip this.
I was honored.
Yes. But ultimately, when you tried to talk to Brittany, Derek F and Azza come up with her. And that leads to the confrontation that we do see in the episode. And then afterward, the discussion you have with X is, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
And it seemed like primarily because so openly Big D and Azza opposed this idea, this flip. Mm-hmm. And so if you pushed it through, that would not be good for the cookout. I don't
even know if they opposed the flip. I think they just opposed me.
I mean, I think Azza definitely was opposed to the flip. She really wanted Christian gone. Big D, yeah.
Big D was against anything I was for, but yeah, and Azza made it clear that she didn't want Christian to stay because she. You know, we needed a strong player from the Kings to go. And ultimately, it went the way it was supposed to go. It was an emotional decision and it was for my own personal game. I had a good relationship with Christian. I hated to see him go. I felt like, Brent, we're kicking out all the personality here. His house is going to be boring. Oh my gosh. Am I going to have to just do everything? So yeah, I didn't want to see him go on a personal level, but on a game level, he was better for my game than SB. And I had wanted her gone at that point. So, it would have been better for me for her to go. But I did realize, like, I can't just go against my own master plan. Mm-hmm. And it's not good for the six for Christian to stay, because when would we be able to take him out? We've already got Derek X, who's just as strong of a competitor. So if it was a different BB, I would have flipped that house upside down.
Well, it's funny, too, because Christian, when we talked to him when he came out, he did not know how close it was. And he was like, because part of the reason why Azza and Big D follow Brittany up is because Christian is the one to come down and get Brittany. And when they were like, for who? He was like, Tiffany. And he was like, oh, I screwed it up.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, I screwed it up.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he should have said Xavier. They would have left. They would have been like, oh, okay, Brittany, Xavier wants you. And then she would have just came up with Christian. We would have flipped the vote. And who knows what would have happened then. But he said my name. You can never say my name to the Jokers.
This is also, this whole situation, it's around this time, Big D, and you'll probably see it in the episode, is going to go a little Frenchy himself and be like, F the cookout, I'm out.
Oh.
And Ozza kind of has to be like, no, Big D. Big D.
Okay. It would have been better for my game if he would have said, F the cookout, I'm out.
Yeah. And Oz is going to tell the cameras at this point she feels like she really just feels like she can't trust you, but she's not going to turn on the cookout.
Okay.
And she just wants everybody to get along.
Yeah, I understand. I think we both wanted the same thing, but we were going about it differently.
Yeah. So Christian is voted out. And we are now into the jury, and the hard part here is done. You guys now have a majority, and this is Name That Croon, and controversy starts again.
Yeah.
The first of many things that Kyland was either supposed to or not supposed to throw, first he says to Ozza, like, yes, I'll throw it to you, and then he doesn't, and then to you he does try to throw it, but
I can't catch it.
But you couldn't
I can't catch it.
And you're very upset about this. Ozza's very upset about this. You're upset because it means Sarah Beth is in the house for another week. And Ozza's upset because she feels, disrespected by Kyland. And this is a tricky week. The high roller twist is introduced. And initially, Kyland, who really hasn't had too much of a relationship with you over the past couple of weeks, is looking at like maybe I want Clara, maybe I want to put up Tiffany and Claire. But then he has a conversation with you where you kind of talk through, hey, we've been distant over the last couple of weeks. Tell me about this, because how was this a genuine conversation from your part? Were you worried that you were in trouble?
No.
What was this conversation about?
I wasn't worried that I was in trouble, but I needed him to understand that my reaction to him winning wasn't personally against him. I was definitely upset that he won, but I wasn't upset with him. I did not know at that time that he had that conversation with Ozza, that he was supposed to throw that to Ozza. So I was not even aware that occurred. When Kylan won, I was more so upset that I could have been HOH and I wasn't. I could not even win when somebody was handing me the competition. Of course, I wanted my letter and my pictures from home, which I later realized that is no reason to win HOH. If you want letters and pictures from home and you want to know about your family, you should have just stayed home. And so, and then I also knew that him winning ensured Sarah Beth's safety one more week. And that was my own personal game where I'm like, I need her out of this house. Everybody else I've got. I don't have Sarah Beth. And even though she wasn't targeting me, I may have been wrong about that. I still didn't have her where I felt that she would do things that I would want her to do. And so still, that was a threat to my game. So I was more so upset that, oh my gosh, here Sarah Beth is safe again because Kylan won HOH and I couldn't even get it. So I wanted him to understand, I know that you saw how frustrated and upset I was. I'm not upset with you. I'm just upset that she's got to be here again longer. And I couldn't even win when you clearly tried to help me. Now, when Ozza told me that about him, I was like, oh, Kai, I couldn't believe that he said he was going to do something and then up there he didn't do it. I was like, oh, okay. And then he actually confided in me and told me, he was like, I didn't trust it. And I was like, I couldn't understand that 100% because I'm like, we're in the cookout. We're not going to go against each other, are we? But the fact that he said he didn't trust it, I was like, well, that's legit. If you didn't trust it, then you didn't trust it. And so you had to go for the win. But I knew that you trusted me because he actually did try to throw that comp to me. And so I felt that we should have a conversation because I was not feeling as close to him, but I wanted to feel closer. I had already solidified my final two with Hannah by that time, but to cover my basis, I needed to make sure that someone else would consider me for a final two as well. Not that he hadn't considered me, we already had it, but I wanted to make sure that I was still good with him in case one of them ended up there and I was the third person, both of them would choose me.
So Had your plan changed at all? When you initially made the master plan, you were thinking your final four would be Kyland, Hannah, Xavier, with you. Had that changed at all up until this point, or had it stayed the same?
It had stayed the same at that point. But it was right. It almost is knocking on the door, because Xavier tells me when Kylan won that Name That Croon that he wants Kylan out at 6. And I'm like, okay, well, I do too. But I didn't want him out at 6, but I wanted Xavier to feel that I did, because I needed Xavier to trust me enough to talk to me. And I did not know why he was really comfortable with sharing that to me. I felt that maybe the 6 hadn't had their connections as tight, and maybe we were just now establishing those connections. So I think Xavier and I had a conversation about me, him, and Hannah having a final 3. I wanted to have a final 3 with me, Hannah, and Xavier, and me, Hannah, and Kyland. But Xavier, I could never get close enough to believe that, but I did want him to trust me enough to tell me what he wanted to do. And he said he wanted to take Kai out at 6. And so that let me know, I don't know how long I want to keep Xavier in this game. And then I also felt that Kai and I were interchangeable with Xavier at 6. And so I felt like we're not going to make it to 4.
And this is really the week where sort of like the inter battle of the cookout for like who is going to keep their pawn the longest. And so Kyland, after talking to you and talking to Claire, and talking to Hannah, decides he doesn't want to target Claire this week. He wants to target Alyssa. And Claire and Derek at this point are actually talking of like, can we get him to target Xavier? What do you think? And DX pitches to Kyland like, should we take the shot at Xavier?
No.
Kylan was like, I don't think it's the time. But maybe Alyssa. Alyssa, right? And so the plan is initially Alyssa. But then he talks to Xavier in the morning, and Xavier's like, that's not fair. I just lost Christian.
I knew he wasn't going to be okay with that.
And you had to talk to Xavier a lot in the previous week. About being okay with letting Christian go, because he was very opposed to it at first. And so he was not okay with losing Alyssa. So Kylan says, okay, he tells Hannah, all right, the plan should be, I'll put up Claire for now to appease Xavier, and then we'll have a few days to get him on board with backdooring Alyssa. But then the high roller comes around. And so Claire goes on the block. We get to the high roller situation, and Brittany has won 100 BB bucks, and you are trying to save Claire if you can, and an easy scapegoat appears with this whole situation. When the feeds come back from the high roller competition, you're talking to Xavier about like, I don't think it should be Claire.
Yeah,
I think it should be Brittany, and he's like, I agree. And you're like, perfect.
Yes. So I knew that if I could get Xavier to agree with me, then he would get everybody else. So I always needed Xavier to be on my side, because he was the link to the Jokers. And I also felt that Kyland would agree with what Xavier wanted to do. So I felt that Xavier had a little more sway than I did with getting people on board. It could be my idea and they would say no, but if it's Xavier's idea, they'll say yes.
And now, of course, Kyland had run through these like one-on-one sessions where he got them to name like the biggest threat in the game, who's the most influential player, and Ozza said Frenchie.
Ozza saying Frenchie was the funniest thing I had ever heard.
Yeah. And so Claire had told him, or he was saying that Claire, because he actually lied about what, I don't know if he lied or if he forgot what Claire actually said, but he was talking about how Claire was saying that she would target, I think both Xavier and him or something, or no, sorry, Xavier and Big D, which was the case, but I don't think she told him both of those names. But it was true that those were the people she was targeting. And so he's talking about this as a concern, and you're like, oh no, don't worry about that. She's really targeting Sarah Beth. He just doesn't want to tell you. you convinced of that, or did you know that you were kind of covering for her there?
I was definitely covering for her. I did know that she wanted to target X and Big D, but I didn't want anyone to target Claire. So I wanted him to be comfortable enough with keeping Claire. And I knew that Claire would target Sarah Beth as well.
Yeah.
But, and I felt that she would target Sarah Beth a little more strongly than X and Big D. So I wanted to kind of calm Kai's anxiety down about X and Big D and let him know, like, she just can't tell you that she would target SB because it's obvious to her that you and SB are very close. So she's not going to tell you that. She's not in the cookout, so she can't tell you that. So, but she would not target X and Big D.
So Xavier ends up having a conversation between, having this sort of mediation session with you and Azza. Would you say this was like a turning point in your relationship with Azza? Because it does seem like it went somewhat well, but it also felt like this was something that, like, you were having fewer conflicts with her lately, especially once, she was more upset with Kyland that week. What were your thoughts on this sort of like mediation session?
It was much needed, and it was definitely a turning point. There were a lot of things that were swept under the rug between me and Azza, and a lot of miscommunication, misunderstanding, and some resentment on both ends. And X did a great job of mediating that conversation, allowing both of us to express ourselves. And I think we both did a phenomenal job of keeping cool, but also, being emotional in genuine emotion when we felt it, but allowing each other the chance to get things off of our chest and being receptive to what each other was saying. And it definitely made me feel a lot better. I felt that there were some things that she understood about how I felt, and there were some things that I understood about how she felt, and we cleared up the miscommunication. I think that after we had that conversation, Azza and I never turned back.
Yeah. How do you feel about your relationship with Azza now?
Oh, I'm great with Azza.
Yeah.
Game is game, and whatever happened in the game those are our game moves. But as a person, I've always loved her as a person. I've always adored her as a person. I always wanted us to be friends, to be sisters, which was why I was like, I'm not talking game to Azza, because I don't want us to fall out about this game. This is a game. I love her on a personal level. So if I've got to not talk game and so we can keep remaining sisters, then we just won't talk game.
Yeah.
So today we are good.
Good. Okay. So, Alyssa ends up winning the veto because Kyland throws it to her.
He gives her a little help. Kyland is a helper.
Again, very, very poorly throws it to her. And he tells you and way too many other people that the idea behind throwing this to Alyssa was that he wanted to prove to Claire that she could trust him.
Yes.
And by throwing it to Alyssa, he would get a veto because of the high roller twist, and Claire would not, which means she would have to rely on him to then prove via actions that she could trust him. Now,
Kyland logic.
Yes, Kyland logic. Did you think this was in the conversation with Kyland about this? How much of it were you just needing to be like, okay?
A lot. I learned to say these 4 words, and it just kind of gets you out of any situation. You're right about that. If I just let you know you're right about that, then you don't have to argue with me anymore about it. You don't have to prove it to me. And so when he said that, I'm like, okay, Kyland, she trusted you. So it's like, and so I told him, I think I said this to him, it's like, okay, so I don't know if you trust me, but you're telling me you trust me, but how about this? Let me break it, okay? And so I'm going to break the trust that we have. Then I'm going to show you how I'm going to repair it. And then I'm going to build it. And then you will trust me. And I was like, Kyland, this is already Big Brother. What kind of Big Brother inside of Big Brother are you trying to play here?
Yeah. That's Kyland.
Yeah, Kyland logic.
That's Kyland. You talked to Hannah about your ideal final three this week. And this is when, and you kind of alluded to this already, that you're kind of thinking about, okay, maybe I don't want to go to the end with both Kyland and Xavier. You kind of suggest, what if we went to the end with Azza? What if the women stuck together? And at this point, Hannah is not really on board. She's still like, no, I think X should be there with us. And that's going to change coming into the following week. But when she said that, were you thinking, okay, I need her to change her mind here? Or what was your thought process?
No, I trusted Hannah's thought process. I wanted to know if I was actually thinking things through, if I was thinking the right way. I was kind of leaning on her for that moment to give me a little direction. I definitely wanted to see the girls go to the end. I would love to have seen all three of us women stick together. But I needed to know if that was just a dream or if that could be a reality. And sometimes I'm a dreamer. And so when Hannah said to me, like, I don't know. And I felt that it was logical to think that, because Azza did not really trust me and she never trusted Chada. So how could we trust Azza to go with us to the end? But I did feel like if it was something Azza would agree to, if Azza would have agreed that she was going to go with us to the end, I would have believed that, because I believed that Azza would do the things that she said she would do. But I just did not know if she would do it. And we actually said, well, let's keep it as a thought, but we just won't tell Azza right away, because we didn't want her to tell the guys. And I definitely felt that she was in closer with the guys than she was with us.
Brittany goes up. It's fairly straightforward from here. Brittany ends up going home, and then heading into the next week. This is the real heartbreaker here, because Derek was very close. Now, if Derek,
he almost broke up the cookout.
Yeah,
if he had
won, he was planning on putting up Xavier.
Well, he almost broke up the cookout even going home, because I was ready to say forget it all. I was like, forget it. If I got to get rid of Derek X, forget it.
Well, barely beat out by Sarah Beth, but she wins. But then, for a lot of people, they went to bed that night because Sarah Beth had a bunch of conversations. She said, as I've told you before, she said, person I feel best about outside of Kyland is Tiffany. And I really want to use this week to re-solidify the jackpot.
Oh, wow.
And I want to target Xavier. And I want Xavier and Alyssa on the block, and really like solidify my relationships with Tiffany and Claire. And she said, I am not going to let Kyland run my HOH.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to make my own decisions. And a lot of people went to bed that night thinking, oh boy.
Wow. Yeah, I'm like, oh boy. Okay. Wow.
But Kyland stayed up all night with her.
As he will. Kyland will stay up all night.
And for a period of around 6 hours, talked to her in the HOH room. And wore her down.
That's why I wanted to see him in the final two. Honestly, I really did.
He had a lot of influence here.
He
yeah,
worked. He did.
I mean, genuinely, and I've said this a lot. Like the two of you easily had the most amount of influence in the game. And I would really like Kyland's game if he hadn't kind of wanted to go to the end with people that would beat him.
Duh. Except for if he wanted to take me.
Right. So he really, really works on Sarah Beth, and says that, obviously, hey, I can get you in with Xavier and Alyssa. You don't need to worry about them. Like, we can work on those relationships. And can you really trust Claire? And I mean, it's hard to boil down 6 hours of Kyland talk. It was also, by the way, they were whispering the whole time.
Oh gosh!
In the HOH room by themselves.
Oh gosh!
I lost my mind.
I would have lost my mind too. I commend you for even keeping up with that. I would have been like, "Hey, call them and tell them to just talk."
Yeah. So a lot of people woke up the following morning to the exact same nominations that Kyland had made the week before. And that's when F Sarah Beth and I said that shit. started trending on Twitter.
No way. No way. Oh my gosh. You know, I did not. I was like, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I was like, I didn't say that. They had to play the clip. I was like, well, it wasn't like that.
So successfully got her to target Derek X with the backdoor situation here, and of course, along with that comes that you guys have to convince Derek to not play in the roulette, because if he does, that would be very bad, especially if he saves Claire from the nominations, and then he's also safe. There's just a lot of potentially bad situations that could come of that. You took part in this, but it was primarily, Hannah and Kylan talks to him as well, getting him to not play. It almost seemed like you're like, I'm not going to stop this, but I don't really want to contribute too much.
Yeah, that was exactly where I was. I was like, well, y'all get your work cut out. I mean, I do remember being in the open room saying something to him once, like, I don't really think you got to play then, but I didn't want to tell him that.
Yeah, you didn't try very hard.
No.
And so then, of course, he doesn't play, and that means that Alyssa ends up getting and poor Alyssa is like all excited about how like these competition wins. That
of course,
she was the only one that played.
Right.
And she ends up saving Big D, and then Xavier is the replacement. She's very upset, and so now it's pretty much locked in, especially once the veto draw happens. Derek X is not drawn. You are not drawn. Hannah's not drawn. It was like, oh, the week is over as soon as the veto draw happens, because he had no chance. Xavier ends up winning the veto. Derek X goes in the block.
Yep.
And again, it felt like, you weren't really standing in the way here, but you also weren't like, I'm not gonna take a large part in this.
Yeah.
There were some conversations. Now, what happened is once Derek X is on the block with Claire, you want to save Derek X.
Yeah.
And by the way, from my perspective, this is so what happened in the week prior when Brittany was on the block, it wasn't that straightforward because Derek X and Claire were trying to flip the vote.
Okay.
Right? So I said it was fairly straightforward in the sense that it was never actually going to flip. And they actually got Alyssa on board for a little while, and she talked to you, and you were like, do we really need Brittany?
Yeah.
Or do we really need Brittany to go after Sarah Beth? Like, I don't think so.
We don't.
And so that got shut down, and they kept trying, and it just wasn't working. It wasn't landing. And so in the episodes, it was portrayed as though like it was Derek X and Claire trying to flip the vote, trying to do something, and like you were the person blocking it. And you were to an extent, but like so was everybody else.
Yeah, that's true. Right. So was everybody else, but they were closer to me.
That's why I think you got the $50.
Because I blocked them.
Because in the episodes, you were really like seen as the buzzkill in that episode.
Okay. Thanks, America.
So, which of course, like typical Big Brother twist and audience voting screws over.
I figured that.
Yeah, the people they actually want to benefit.
Yeah.
But so then this week you are hoping to sacrifice Claire for Derek X, which the audience actually is like, okay, we're on board with that. We like Derek X. But it's not really working. Derek works on Azza, and he actually gets Azza on board for a little while, but X keeps saying no. And Big D is considering it as well, but then Kylan says no. And ultimately, this is never going to happen without Kylan. And it's again like you tried, but you weren't going to like put your game on the line. You weren't going to break up the cookout.
I knew they were already frustrated with me from the week before with Christian. I didn't want to put a huge target on my back. I was like, you know what? I will give him some strategy. I will give him some campaign tips, but I can't campaign for him.
And so, I mean, he did an admirable job.
He did.
Considering he was drawing dead.
I knew he had no chance, but try it anyway.
And again, like in the week prior to this, you had a long conversation with Xavier about, Xavier had been convinced at that point that Derek needed to go next, in large part because of the money that he had. When I watched that conversation during Kylan's HOH reign, where Xavier's talking about how Derek needed to go next, and you were like, I don't think so. Yeah. That felt like a turning point in the game for your relationship at the very least, right? Where like you are now at opposite ends of what you're looking to accomplish, and he's now recognizing that you're not aligned with what he wants, and you're recognizing that he's not aligned with what you want. And that seemed to be the start as well of like, for a long time, Derek X and Claire have been at you about like, we got to get rid of X, this guy. And you've been like, no, he's cool. He's chill. Don't worry about it. But after that conversation, it was like, I mean, he is a big threat.
Yeah. Yeah. He did jump onto my radar, and I knew that because I could start to see he could not keep any of his emotion out of his body language. And I could see in his face, and I could read in his eyes, and I could just hear in his that we would. All X has to do is go, I'm like, oh yeah, well, he ain't hearing nothing I'm saying right now. And I was like, he is not buying it. I knew I was on his radar, and so therefore he was on mine.
So Xavier, he ends up going into solitary confinement, and there was some thought that like, okay, maybe while he's gone, something can happen, but nothing does. No. You end up pitching to Azza, hey, I think that the women should work together in the cookout, but this is, she's not super receptive to it here. You're gonna pitch it again once you win, the next like 2 HOHs, But this is when it seems like you are starting to figure out what kind of end game are you looking for. You're going to talk to Hannah again about your final 3 situation. And Hannah is starting to come around to the idea of like, maybe we should drop X a little bit sooner. What if we took out Big D first and then Xavier at 5, and then we go to 4.
This is with me and Chada.
With you and Chada, and then you go to 4 with Kylan and Oz. And this is when it starts to look like that's possible because Xavier is still targeting Kylan first, and he is in the diary room on the show saying, "I want to go to the end with Oz, with Tiffany and Hannah." Because
now, who's saying that?
Xavier's saying that. And he says it's because they've done the least.
Okay.
They've done, I don't have the exact quote, but you'll watch it in the episode. So at that point, it's like, okay. And when I talked to him on finale night, I asked him, when he changed that idea. And what he said was that like he wanted to go to the end with you 2 and Big D. And so it was a final 4 kind of thing.
Okay.
But he was looking to target Kylan. And
I wish Kylan knew that.
All right. And Kylan was not really looking to target Xavier because Kylan at this point is still talking about Batman versus Superman.
No,
and
superhero.
I guess at this point he hadn't talked about Batman versus Superman. That's when he chose Xavier. At this point he's still talking about like himself, Xavier, and you, and he's not going to take a shot at either one of you because that would be taking out one of the big guns. And so this is when, despite everything, I was like, she might actually pull this off. Like this was not her optimal path, but it's looking like something could work here. So you and HOH, and this is not a bad spot for it because of the coin of destiny is in play, and Hannah comes up with a plan to get Claire to win it because you guys know what Claire's going to do, and if Claire wins it, she's not going to be able to play in the next one. You are going to be able to play in the next one. And you winning at 8 would be great because then you can't play at 7. You definitely play at 6. And it also means that you can probably keep
Claire around. Now, of course, ideally you winning at 8 would be great.
Yeah.
In practice, it didn't turn out that way.
Yeah.
But obviously your target is Sarah Beth.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is all pretty straightforward. You get Claire the coin of destiny. Julie calls it the coin of destiny.
Oh, okay.
And Claire does what you did. She puts up Sarah Beth and Kylan. And I talked to her earlier today, and I asked her about this, and she said, basically, there was no way I was going to do anything different than what Tiffany did. It was just, it was not really even an option for her. You were so excited to win your HOH. And, she knew that you really wanted Sarah Beth out. And even though she wanted Xavier out, she also was like, I don't know how to get Xavier out because he's already on the block. I have to have 3 nominees. And so, especially given her knowledge at the time, Alyssa would have gone up and it wouldn't have mattered. But she does that. Xavier is the 3rd nominee. Hannah wins the veto. And Hannah wants to use the veto on Xavier to leave Kylan and Sarah Beth on the block. But Kylan wants the veto used on him.
I do not even understand. Yeah, because we were all doing things to benefit our own personal gain, but I was the only one who was reprimanded for that. But yes, Kylan wanted to use the veto to pull himself off the block, I believe, so that he could put Alyssa up there so that I would have to put Alyssa next to SB, and then I believe that they were going to try to get Alyssa out.
I think from my perspective, it was kind of just like, why is it Xavier that's coming off the block, not me?
Yeah, that too. I think there was some competition there about why we were pulling Xavier off the block, and I was pulling Xavier. I wanted Xavier to come off of the block because I wanted SB and Kai to sit next to each other. I didn't want him to be able to come because he was going to campaign for her.
Well, what he said is that he wanted to be able to give her a sympathy vote.
Well, I gave him one for her.
Yes.
See, I'm always trying to help.
This is when, in the episode, you provided the soundbite that was the most popular.
Oh my!
All season long. It was
Shut the up, Kylan.
He's going to be so mad. That's when I wanted him to see, because he wanted to use he was going around having these one-on-ones. He's having a one-on-one with Azza. He's having one-on-ones with everybody about this veto. And Claire is getting so suspicious, wanting to know, why is Colin having these one-on-ones? Why is he trying to get the veto on use on him? What is he trying to do? And I'm like, yes, shut the fuck up, Kylan. Like, what are you doing? No one's pulling you down from the block. You've been with Sarah Beth all this time. She's been your best friend. You cried on her shoulder. You guys ate together. You worked out together. You have done everything together. You wake up every morning. You nap together. You do everything in the afternoon. You do everything in the evening. You stay up in the wee hours of the morning. Sit on the block together.
Mm-hmm. And he's really pissing Xavier off as well. I mean, they're going to get into it. Xavier's like, Xavier's is mad at Kylan like he gets mad at you the following week. And so things are not looking super great for Kylan here, as it's starting to look like Xavier. And this is why things are looking great for you, because Xavier's targeting Kylan.
Mm-hmm.
Big D is pretty much the only person targeting you, but, you know.
He can't win anything.
Yeah.
Who said that?
Azza is targeting Kylan.
Mm-hmm.
And you and Chada are targeting Xavier.
Mm-hmm.
And Kylan, I assumed at this point, would have probably targeted Azza first.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a really good scenario.
Mm-hmm.
If Xavier takes out Kylan, then now Xavier can't win, and you guys can take out Xavier.
Mm-hmm.
If Kylan takes out Azza, then they're both still in there. Xavier's going after Kylan. You're still good. If you guys win and take out Xavier, Kylan now is going to take you to the final two, and you're going to beat him. And so things are looking okay when we get to Sarah Beth getting voted out, and then the following HOH competition. Now, leading up to this HOH competition, there's been a lot of talk of who should be the one to go next, whether it's Claire or Alyssa. Hannah has gone back and forth because she's. We talked about this a little bit. But she was like very dead set on the idea of a buyback, of a battle back.
Yes.
But then she was like, wait a minute. She's been convinced. Oh, there's
no
probably not going to be a battle back. So Claire should stay. And Azza wants Alyssa to be the one to go. You want Alyssa to be the one to go. But the men, Big D, Xavier, and Kylan, all would prefer for Claire to go first. And so Chada tells everyone, okay, the people that should win, Big D and Azza, first and foremost, because they're the ones who can take a shot at either one. And then Tiffany and Xavier shouldn't win because then they're going to have to take a shot at one of their own people if worse comes to worse. I could win. Kylan could win. And that's generally sort of like the situation there. But when we get to the HOH competition, it comes down to you, Xavier, Azza, and Kylan. And we were watching this play out live on a podcast.
Okay.
And I saw it all. I was like, Xavier's gonna drop, and then he's gonna watch from the sidelines with his arms crossed, waiting for everyone else to drop. And
exactly what he did.
and I don't know that Kylan's gonna drop before Tiffany, and I don't know that Tiffany's gonna drop before Kylan. And so that's pretty much how it plays out.
Okay.
And you were up there with Azza and Kylan. What's going through your head?
What's going through my head is if Kylan falls and it's just me and Azza, I'm going to drop and Azza can win HOH. I knew she really wanted that. She wanted to see her family. I wanted that for her. But Azza falls. And so when Azza falls, I'm like, oh, I can really win this. I can actually win my second HOH. I could just feel, I'm an energy person. I can feel the energy. I could feel my family saying, stay up there, Tiff. Forget his third HOH. This can be your second HOH. I could feel them cheering me on, whether it was good for my game or bad for my game. I felt that my family wanted me to win. I wanted to win. This could be my second HOH back to back. I had already called it out. I don't even know if they showed that in the DR, but I had said it. I was like, I want to be dethroned. I want to be dethroned because I can be HOH again next week and it can be Groundhog's Day. And so I had already said that. So I wanted that. So when I was up there and I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm going to let the competition play out. If Kylan beats me, he beats me. But if I beat him, then I won my second HOH. And he asked me it several times, like, what do you want? I was like, I want to win it. But he acted like he didn't hear that. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you win and Xavier's on the sidelines.
I know. He winked at me when I walked up and I was like, oh, he is mad as hell.
Things go very wrong from here.
Yes.
Because having lost Xavier, Xavier is now, for basically the rest of the game going to be talking about how selfish you are for winning this HOH. And where previously it had been sort of Big D complaining a lot to Xavier and a lot to Azza about you, and Azza kind of either complaining with him depending on what time it was or defending you. And Xavier kind of just being like, sure. Now it's Xavier and Big D. Like, it's all aboard the Tiffany train here. And so Big D, who previous to this as well had been very seemingly locked in with Kylan, is now moving a little more toward Xavier. Solidifying that. And also Chada and Xavier, who had been very close up until this point, are starting to drift apart because he's very anti-you and she's not very anti-you. And you saw this was happening. You were like, he's pissed off. They're all pissed off. But like, what am I gonna do? Was there any thought to like how can I repair this? Like, what can I do?
Yeah, I did think that. And I felt that the only thing I could do was be honest about the situation. I wanted to win it, and I know it wasn't ideal for me to win. And I'm not sorry, but I know that I just took that win into my own hands. I talked to Xavier first. Xavier was the first person that I talked to after the HOH, because I knew if he was pissed, then he had the influence to have everyone else upset with me. But if I could just smooth it over with him, then he would fight for me. But I did not think that I had smoothed it over with him because it was Alyssa who would be the target, and he did not want Alyssa to go home. So I was trying to figure out how I could smooth it over, but they were already upset with, they already wanted me gone, I felt, but 5 or 6 before that. So I just really kind of like nailed it when I did that. But I never regretted it. Like, I wanted to win that, and I did. And the only thing I would probably do differently is say something ahead of time, like, hey, I'm just going to tell you guys, if there's an opportunity for me to win this, I want to win it. I do want to keep Claire safe. And they wouldn't have liked it. So it really wouldn't have mattered whether I said something or not, because it was all going to play out the same way.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've talked to Xavier about this, but Xavier was actually thinking about using the veto if he won it on Alyssa that week, if he had won.
I don't think he would tell me that, but I knew that. I knew all of those options were going through their heads. I don't even know if I was saying it to America, but I was saying it to them, like, you guys aren't going to help me win this veto. If you win it, and I pulled Kai into the storage room and I said, is there any talk about, and I had not heard it. I just had that inclination. I said, is there any talk about someone using the veto to save Alyssa if they win it? And he goes, no. I was like, are you sure? And he's like, well, there was some talk, but I kind of put that to rest. And I'm like, I so know people. I knew that because they were so not happy about me winning it. And it's just, some humans would just love to see you fail at something. And the best way for me to fail or to have to put up Claire is if Alyssa comes off of the block. And I knew at that point that they were willing to do that, to help her stay. So it did not surprise me at all. But no, he didn't tell me. And that's the first time I've talked about that.
Had he used the veto on Alyssa, would you still have put up Claire? Or would you have been like, all right?
Damn. That is really tough because I was so loyal to the 6 getting to 6. I actually want to say that no, I wouldn't have put up Claire, but because I don't know, I felt that I kind of had did them wrong when I won because I wasn't transparent with what I wanted to occur, and I did want to fix what I had broken with them. And I probably would have still put up Claire. Mm-hmm. And I said coming into this game, I was like, one of my issues is going to be being too loyal, and I probably would have still put up Claire, but I want to say that if they would have done that to me, that I would not have put up Claire. But I'll tell you, the pressure of the mission, whether it was in the beginning to move forward with the mission or not, or whether it was at the end, being the one to kill it, I didn't want to be the one to get that blood on my hands. I would get all the blood on my hands of getting these people out of the house, but I never knew how we were being received. I never knew what the outcome would be leaving out of the house. And I did not want to be the one who killed our opportunity of getting there. So I probably would have still put Claire on the block.
Mm-hmm. We're back again.
Hello, Taran.
What an adventure this has been.
Oh, it's always an adventure with me. That's just how my life is set up.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like an adventure around here.
Nothing is ever normal with me. Just get used to that.
Yes, we are on day 2 of the Tiffany deep dive. This is how long it takes to get through all of the game that went down.
It's a lot that went on in there.
I believe that where we left off was your second HOA train.
Okay.
And Alyssa ends up winning the veto.
Oh God.
Worst case scenario.
Oh God.
You've got to nominate Claire. There's
do.
a lot of discussions about like what you're going to be like allowed to tell her and what you should tell her. But I mean, I have to imagine this is like
the worst.
Yeah, just it must be like what it feels like when you have to break up with somebody.
Yeah.
But different.
I stayed locked in my room for most of the time. When I think about my HOH, from the time Alyssa won the veto, I came back to the house. I came back to my room. I stayed in my room. I did not want to talk to anybody, and I definitely did not want to be alone with Claire because I was so emotional. And you know, when someone comes to talk in a situation like that, they're going to be talking game, and that's my girl. So I know she's going to be asking me like, so how are you going to put up Big D? Or, like, so what are you going to do? And I didn't want to lie to her. So I kind of just stayed away. I was very upset. So I was like snapping at people almost. So I really just stayed to myself. And then there was a moment where the next day, Chada and Kylan, Azza came to my room first thing in the morning. Like, she almost woke me up, and she laid in the bed with me, and she said, why don't we just rip the Band-Aid off and tell him the truth? Mm-hmm. And I was like, Azza, I'm ready to tell the truth. Like, I live in the truth. That's what I want to do. She's like, I don't, fine. I was like, but we got to talk to everybody else. Kylan and Chada are like, hey, I'm fine with just telling the truth. And I think Big D was actually on board too. But at that point, Xavier still had, sorry. At that moment, Xavier still had Alyssa in the game. And his game would have been jeopardized. And all of our game could have been jeopardized because at that point, Alyssa and Claire could have banded together to say, we're going to kick Xavier out, we're going to stay, and then we're going to try to take the rest of you out. So I understood him not wanting to expose that. But then there was a moment after I asked Chada and Kai, like, what if I give her my truth and I don't say anything about everyone else? And he was like, well, I'll talk to Xavier about that and see if he's comfortable with that. But he left the HOH room. Chada left the HOH room. Claire comes in after we're having that conversation. It was all four of us, but when they left, it was just me and Claire. And in that moment, I knew, like, I'm just going to have to tell her. And no one in the house knew that I was getting ready to have this conversation. Mm-hmm. But, like, this is my friend. I can't keep tiptoeing around this. And she's looking at me. And Claire just is, to me, Claire can do no wrong. So when she's looking at me like, Tiff, how are you feeling? I'm like crap. Like, I got to do something that I don't want to do. And so then I just say, forget it. It's like when you got to ask your parents, can you do something? You're afraid they're going to tell you no, but you're like, on the count of three, I'm just going to ask. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, Tiff, just start talking.
Yeah. It was a rough conversation to watch, I can tell you.
Did that air live? I mean, was that on the live feed?
It was on the feeds. And it was like, everybody run to the computer because this is going down.
Oh, God.
And a lot of people were very emotional.
Oh, God.
It was
I get emotional thinking about it.
But it was a painful moment, but it was such a beautiful moment too, because of just how understanding she was and how much she loved you, and how much you clearly loved her, but like you had this greater purpose that you had to you had to make this choice.
I did.
And it was just, I mean, to me, it was a moment that really just transcended, the show of like this is a show of a bunch of people in a house, backstabbing each other for $750,000. But this was like the perfect example of not only exemplifying what you and the Cookout were doing here, trying to get the first Black winner, trying to make the statement that you did, but also like the example of you, of the sacrifice that you're making, not only for your own strategic game, but also for your own like personal feelings. And for Claire too, to in that moment be able to just immediately recognize, not a few days later once she has time to settle, but gut reaction is I just love you and I understand.
I don't know. I don't know. That made it, I can't say it made it worse. It just made it, she's just such an amazing person, and I loved her so much more for understanding and I knew that Claire had such a great sense of awareness, and I knew that we both respected each other. And the fact that she was able to immediately comprehend that and digest it and accept it, and not hate me for it or be upset with me. And I remember her saying, I'm not even going to fight you on this, Tiff. She said, you do not have to even explain to me. And I'm just thinking about how great of a woman she is, because I know she was never expecting that she would ever not be safe when I'm safe and I can keep her safe. So, and I know she knew in that moment that her game was probably over, but I did still want her to fight because anything could have happened. But that was a moment that I was grateful that Claire was my friend. It was all game aside, like this is my friend, but I didn't feel like I was like being her friend though. And that was the moment I was like, I hate this game. I've loved this game with a passion, and you see people go through things and they're like, oh, did I play this game? I hate this game. And I have always loved it. I loved playing it. And in that moment, I was like, screw this game. Like, I hate this game. That was the hardest moment for me in that house.
There was a funny moment when Azza came in to check on you guys and just slowly closes the door.
See, my back was to her, so I didn't know who it was, and I wasn't like, I was so busy in my own moment with Claire. And you know, here's something that was really dope though. It was, we were laughing, and then we were crying, and then we were laughing, and then we were crying, and we were laughing. And there was so much emotion in there. And when I just look back at that moment, it just embodies our real relationship. That Claire and I are so dynamic in our relationship that we can even laugh in a sad moment, you know, and still understand that, you know, we know it's a game, but a part of it is life too. Like, that was a real life moment. And I was glad that we were able to, like, you know, break some ice and still find some humor. And then we would go back to crying, and I'm like, oh my God.
She's not really from Queens.
I'm like, Claire from Queens. She's like, I'm not from Queens, Tiff. I'm like, what are you saying? And I'm like, well, I'm not 22. She's like, I know you're not 22, Tiff. I'm like, wait, how do you know these things? But yeah, it was a moment.
So Claire spends the rest of the week. She does, you know, still try to campaign. She makes some good points, but obviously not going to get anywhere. Claire goes out. Now, there was some talk, you know, Xavier in particular was talking a lot about, you know, throwing the next HOH, throwing the next veto. And he talked to Oz about it. I was like, you can't throw the veto, Xavier. Come on. And he was like,
I still think he did, but that's just my opinion.
That veto. I'm talking about the double.
Oh, the double. Oh, he's going to throw the double.
He had talked about it, but obviously once Chada wins the HOH in the double, he can't throw it because he would have gone home, right?
Yes.
But Hannah wins. And this is a moment, like, so heading into this double eviction, we were very concerned for your safety because you
me too.
were a potential casualty if Alyssa won an HOH or something along those
she was
lines.
coming for me.
But Chada wins, and so at that point, it's okay, if Alyssa wins this veto, then Xavier's probably gone.
Oh, yes.
But he wins it. Alyssa goes home. Was there any notion of like filling her in on the way out? Because it was still very much just kind of like keeping, you know, you had this conversation with Kyland about like he was like, what are we doing? Why are we still lying to her? And he got upset about that. And it seemed kind of like a messy situation. Like you hadn't sort of figured out exactly what the narrative was going to be.
Is that when I pulled Kylan into the back room? Okay. So there was a miscommunication. There was a lot going on in the double. Things were happening so fast, like, oh my gosh, my mind was still stuck outside and we're in the living room. Like things happened so quickly. And let me try to figure this out because we had to do that bathroom thing with Chada twice. When Xavier won the veto and someone had to be replaced, Kylan comes out of the bathroom and says to Azza and I that, hey, somebody needs to go on the block. And I feel like it should be someone who hasn't gone on the block before. And I'm just standing there like, oh, okay, well, it never dawned on me that it should be me. Like, I'm like, this does not involve me. I don't even know why you're telling me. I'm looking at Azza like, girl, you're going to have to go on the block. So then I end up talking to Chada. And so then she's like, I'm going to put Kai up. And I'm like, no, you cannot put Kai up. And she's like, well, he already volunteered. I was like, I don't like that. And she was like, well, he's going up pretty much. And so then when he comes out, when I come out of the bathroom, all I hear him saying to Big D is, are you fine with that? Is that? And I'm like, and then he looks at me and he's like, you're good with that? And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm like, yeah. And I can tell he's very frustrated. So then he's sitting down on the couch, and he's upset. And I say, well, can I talk to you for a minute? And we go to the back and he's like, what, I don't understand what the talking is for. And I'm thinking he's referring to us going back into this bathroom situation, talking to Chada. Like, and I was like, obviously for appearances. And he was referring to why was I calling him to the coral room? Well, I wasn't calling him to the coral room for appearances. I was calling him to the coral room to find out, why are you so upset right now? Like we've got a job that we've got to get done. We're trying to get somewhere, and I really don't want you upset. Like, you're my friend. I don't want you upset. Like, because I rarely have I seen Kylan upset, and so I just don't like for people to be upset anyway. So I'm trying to calm him down. But when I said that didn't help the situation. But we were talking about two different things. And so when I realized that he was asking why was I calling him to the court, when I was like, wait a minute, this is not for appearances. This is because I'm trying to find out why you're so upset. And I still didn't know why he was so upset. Come to find out, he was upset because he had to sit on the block and he felt like someone else should be sitting on the block. Now, granted, even if I had known that was what he was looking for, I was still never volunteering to sit on the block. But yeah, it was just a miscommunication there.
Okay, so that's the whole thing. Was this an indication to you? Because so you were campaigning to Kylan a lot that week about like you need to be with us against Xavier. Did you feel like you had him at that point? Did you no?
Nope.
You felt like this is a lost cause, but it's your only cause.
I was hoping that he saw it the way I did, which was we don't have a choice. We don't make it past the three of us. We don't make it past 4 without each other. Whether you trust me or not, whether you believe what I'm saying or not, we are at the bottom and we only have each other. So if we ever want to make it to the final 3, it is us 3, me, Kai, and Chada together. And so I did not think he believed that.
I remember in particular there was one night where you, Chada, and Kylan were talking up in the HOH room. You were really finally really laying it on thick. Like, we really need to like X needs to go if you want to win this game. And
he was very against that, and his wall up to me was so thick. I was like, I just have to be quiet here. And then Chada started talking and I was like, oh, she's a lot better than me. She's smooth.
And then the next morning, of course, he goes to Xavier and he's like, so last night, Tiffany and Hannah trying to get me to target you.
Damn, Kai.
So it didn't work out too well.
I am so trying to I wanted to be wrong. That was like when I went out, I wanted to be wrong, but we will get there. I tried to get him to see that We only had each other. Why do you believe that Xavier wants to have a superhero battle like you? You know, they didn't put a whole bunch of people who think exactly the same way into this game so that we could all play the same way. You are the only one who wants this superhero battle. Xavier wants to win $750,000. You want to battle for it.
Yeah. And that was the main thing. And, ultimately, I think Kylan got very upset with Xavier when he found out that he was not on board for the Superman versus Batman. But
although I told him 70,000 times, one day he'll listen to me.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even say that Xavier tried that hard to convince him either. I mean, it was mostly...
It was all in it was him.
But... double eviction happens. You get through it. The cookout made it to the final 6.
I was going to answer your question. No, we did not want to tell Alyssa. Well, I'm not going to say we didn't. I wouldn't have mind telling Alyssa the truth. But at that point, everyone was doing what Xavier wanted to do. And everyone was so overprotective of their person, especially Kai and especially Xavier. They were very overprotective of their person. Like, you couldn't even talk to Alyssa without X wanting to know what you talked to them about. Claire had relationships with everybody. I wasn't on Claire like, what are you doing talking to Claire? Why were you talking to Claire? When I wanted to talk to Brittany, Big D and Ozza came up to find out why I wanted to talk to Brittany. So everyone was so overprotective of their person. I would not have mind to have a conversation with Alyssa to say, hey, look, I know you're on your way out. This is what we're doing. But X didn't want that. So no one was going to say anything to her about what we were doing.
All right. I'm getting attacked by the sun now.
Okay. So, and we're moving again.
Yeah, let's do a shift.
Now, if my answers are too long, you just let me know because I am a little winded.
That's exactly what people are here for. All right, another location.
Okay.
I want to explain to the viewers in case it looks weird, and I'll cut this out if it doesn't, but I keep checking the camera to see if it's still recording.
Okay.
I'm not like giving I'm not like giving looks to the camera like,
right, like
what is she saying?
Like you're Frenchie?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, okay. Next.
Yeah. Okay, so big moment, double eviction.
Yes.
It's over. The cookouts made it to the final 6.
Yes.
I think that, like, I could see it on your face that this was maybe not $750,000, but it was your win.
It was.
You were so joyful in this moment.
I was. That was the win for me. I did not think I was going to win the 750. I just didn't see a way for me to get there, especially if Kylan wasn't on board and I didn't feel like he was. So that was the win for me. I was so elated in that moment because we had worked so hard to get there. And I myself did a lot to help us get there. And so I celebrated that win for all of us. We all deserved to be there in that moment. And that's why I never did sacrifice us not getting there. Every move that I made, even though I did have some considerations about flipping some things, I always wanted us to get to 6. It was just going to be a tougher battle for us to get to 6. But I wanted to know what it felt like for us to be in that moment. Selfishly, that was my moment because I wanted to feel that, and I wanted everyone to feel that, and we did. And there's no word to explain how I felt. It was just all joy.
How does it feel to I mean, this, you've been watching for a long time now. You saw Davon recently,
yes.
But you saw Davon on the show.
Yeah.
And you have now helped accomplish this goal. And you have forever left a mark on the show, not only for yourself, having, become a legend.
That is just too much for me. I just can't fathom that right now.
But also, you've left a mark on the show in a very historic sense, in that you helped get the cookout to the final 6. This is something that has never been seen before, not only
in the sense that an alliance made it there, all 6 of them, but also all Black players who, for the last decade, have barely made the jury.
Yeah.
It's an incredible accomplishment, and it's something that I think a lot of people are going to be talking about for a long time. How do you even just how do you all of this above? How do you this is on me? This is me.
I think that we were chosen for that. I think it was way bigger than us, which was why it was so important for us to get there and to do that. I live to be remembered, and I felt very proud to be a part of what the 5 of them did. I felt so honored to have been chosen to be on the cast that was able to make such a bold statement. And we all deserve credit for that. I knew that we were doing something that had never been done. And I love doing something that has never been done. I am going to always be unorthodox in everything that I do. So being the first and doing something different and setting a tone, it was worth me sacrificing my own personal gain for that, because it was more than just the game. It was showing unity. It was showing us coming together. We get Black America gets so much flack for not sticking together, and it's a challenge often. And what you got to see was our real struggles in being united. Things happen where you almost want to divide and you want to quit, and you heard Big D say, I don't want to be in the cookout. I mean, we all almost had those moments where we were like, forget it, or I don't want to work with this person, or I can't work with this person. And in real life, that's how it is. And I know other cultures and other communities share the same struggles. It just, because I'm Black, I only know mine. And even in my family, we have situations where you just cut people off and you just you don't look back, and you're like, I know that's my family and I love this person, but I don't deal with them and I don't talk to them and we don't interact. But when you're in a situation in a house where you can't escape and you can't go anywhere, you have to face your problems because they're not going away. You're in there. We had to keep coming back and working together. And that's something that I will take with me outside of the game. It's just, facing the problem and not just cutting people off, just being able to still stay unified, whether we agree, and we can agree to disagree. We became family in that house. And that's why it's not easy for me to just cut someone off for the things that they said. And I don't know the things that were said. Honestly, I haven't seen everything, but there will probably always still be love from me to everyone, just because that is how I am. But that does not mean we have to be friends, but we will always be united as a family because we shared such a special bond and we did something together, and we will always be connected and our names will always be aligned together. So for that, I cannot just ignore what we all did. That's just how I feel about it.
And it was incredible. I mean, Rob and I did these Q&A podcasts. We had, listeners call in and talk with us. And we had multiple listeners call in who were Black, who, had been watching the show for a long time. It can be a very dispiriting experience to watch it when you come from that perspective. And the amount that the cookout and this season meant to them, I hope that, and I'm sure that you will continue to experience it if you haven't already, but just the experience of how much it meant to them. We had a young woman call in tears because of how inspired she was and how much it meant to her that she was able to see people like her come on the show and really succeed and make a statement like you did. So it's awesome.
I think the people that recognize what we did in that moment. I mean, we actually said $750,000 sounds good, but this will feel better. Mm-hmm. And we put the money in second and put the mission first. And that took a lot because we didn't come here for a mission. No one came here for a mission. The mission was individually to become the winner or me being black was to be the first black female winner. But once I walked in the door and I saw that there were other people like me there, I'm like, you know what? At this point, as long as one of us wins, just because it's never been done on just a regular season, it would be nice to see it. Why not, you know? But it was a huge commitment, and because we all worked together to get it done, it was so rewarding. It was the best day. It felt even better than me winning HOH. It was, especially the second one, but it was the best day, definitely.
All right. Well, best alliance of all time, indisputable. Final six, all six of you. Then things got bad. Kylan wins the final six HOH.
I was so happy. Yes, keep going. Yeah.
And from our perspective too, it was like things weren't looking super great.
Yeah.
But if Kylan won, there should still be a chance because, up until very recently, he was talking a lot about keeping both you and Xavier around. But not so much the case once he wins and we find out what his plans are. This is when he approaches Xavier with the Gentleman. Have you heard of the Gentleman?
I heard of the Gentleman.
Yes. Which was not the favorite alliance of the fan base at the time.
Me either.
Not the favorite name either. But this is you have hope though because
Absolutely,
because even though Kylan doesn't seem to be on board with targeting Xavier, you have not yet realized that he would actually target you.
No.
What is your understanding of the reason Kylan changed his mind?
I still feel that Kylan was thinking about me going out at 6 before he won Head of Household. I do not think the conversations I had with him helped me. He will say that the conversation that I had helped him to realize that we were not connected and he felt that he couldn't trust me. Although in my conversations to him, all I am saying is we definitely don't have a choice but to work together to get to the end. But more so than you feeling stuck with working with me, I want us to be able to trust working with each other. And I don't know if I just should not have said anything. And the reason why is because if I would not have said anything and he would have still put me up, I would have felt like I should have just had a conversation with him. And there was nothing different that I feel like I could have changed about the conversation. I was very candid. I was very honest. And maybe he did not know the things that I was saying to him, such as me informing him that I had told Xavier about our final two. And I really don't feel like that is that much of a secret, but I think he felt betrayed by that. But I don't think that my conversation helped. I think that he realized that I was more disconnected and separated from him than he realized, which probably made him feel that I was closer to Chada and would always choose her over him. And he was right. But still, we could have been in final 3.
Yeah. Yeah, it's honestly, I feel like there are a few different explanations. One of them is, well, Xavier's the best, so I've got to beat Xavier, and if I can't get Xavier to the end with Tiffany, then Tiffany has to go. I think another one is kind of, I think the main one that he talked about, especially to the cameras, was, she should have trusted me. She trusted me more. But the issue with that was like, and Xavier does? Like...
it's so funny how when it comes to me, it's always different than when you compare it to someone else. Xavier did not trust Kylan, and Xavier wanted Kylan out at 6. I never wanted Kylan out at 6. But, you're saying that I didn't trust you when I should have, when Xavier didn't trust you either, but it's different for him. And he also says that because in my pitch, okay, Kylan wanted to see the best two competitors in the final two. And because in my pitch, I am saying to Kylan, Xavier would beat me. The only person who'd probably give him a run for his money is you. He's saying, okay, well then you don't deserve to be sitting next to Xavier. But I'm saying that because I want him to realize how strong of a competitor, or not even strong of a competitor, but just the position that Xavier was in the house, and that this is the game of Big Brother. Our game of Big Brother started at 6. We weren't playing Big Brother prior to that. So now we're playing Big Brother. It is time to get the big threats out. And that wasn't the game that he was playing. He decided the rules in his mind for how he wanted this season to go, for who was going to be the winner. When at that point we were all playing Big Brother now. And so because I was saying Xavier could beat me, he's like, okay, then you're not a contender then for the final two.
I mean, what strong player says, yeah, I beat everyone, don't take me?
I was definitely not going to say that. Now, I have been downplaying my game. So I was even telling Xavier in my pitch, like, yeah, I don't win sitting next to you. You should easily take me. And and in my pitch, and I don't know if you'll ask me that, but we'll talk about it, but I'll wait.
Well, so Kylan is HOH. He ultimately, he has this long conversation with you. It becomes pretty clear, you try to clear the air. It's pretty similar to the one you had during his second HOH in week 6. Except
it is. I felt like it was a deja vu.
It almost felt like it was just kind of being held in limbo until it needed to be brought back up again.
Yeah, like, okay, I remember when we just talked, I got to tell you, I'm going to bring it up again.
Yeah.
And I'm going to add a little more to it because you didn't seem to get it last time.
And it seems like you're in trouble.
That's exactly how I felt.
You do make some attempts here. You pitch to Azza. Azza's actually on board. She's willing to try to keep you around, but Xavier and Big D are not. And that's all it's going to take here. There's really not much hope unless you can either sway Kylan to use the veto, or really that's it. Because once it's in Xavier and Big D's hands, it's pretty much over.
Oh yeah.
So you have one final pitch once Kylan wins the veto.
Yes.
And we've kind of brushed on it, but it's kind of a weird spot because, I guess what you theoretically should be pitching based on what Kylan wants is, okay, I've been downplaying my game this whole time. I'm actually the best player in this house. You'd better not get me anywhere near the end because I'm going to beat everybody.
Yeah.
And then maybe that would have worked, right?
I've been watching Big Brother for years. I've watched every season. I've never seen anyone with that pitch. It never dawned on me that should be my pitch. It's as much as a super fan as I am, I did not have that one in my bag.
Yeah, it's remember when Nicole Franzel called Derek the Dan of the season?
And he immediately went to Cody and was like, we got to get her out. He was like, you are not going to act like I am playing a Dan Giesling game. Exactly. Who does that?
So instead the pitch is, Kylan, you're right about everything.
Yep. I told you, as long as you say you're right about that, you'll be fine.
And I will work for you in this game.
I will.
How much of this pitch was to save yourself? How much of it was because you talked about having a revelation about all of this?
It was 100% true. Listen, after BB Comics, I'm by myself. When I lost, I knew I timed out BB Comics, right? So I'm thinking to myself, forget it. My game is over. I'm going home. I'm just going to enjoy my time here. I'm not even going to pitch to anyone. I get back to the room. I'm by myself and I'm thinking, and I'm like, Tiff, that's not even you. You are not going to quit. You are not going to lay down. You are still going to fight. And I'm like, but how am I going to fight? Who can help me? Now, at this moment, I don't even know who's going to win the veto. But I have decided in my mind that I'm going to talk to Kai, regardless of who has won the veto or not. And so I'm like, what do I say to him? And I'm like, I've got to get him to use the veto on me. I've just got to I've got to humble myself now, and I've got to let him know that I am at his mercy. He completely has me, and I will do whatever he says, whatever he needs done, whatever I have to do to stay in this house. I will not beg, though. I'm like, I will not beg, but I will pitch my case, and I will mean what I am saying here. And that would have been a lot, because I have always been a person who has done what I wanted to do. And it's, a little challenging for me to like reel that in. But I was willing to do that to stay in the game. Like, okay, Kai, whatever you want me to do, I'll take out whoever you need me to take out. Whatever is required, I will do it. So in my pitch, when I am telling him these things like, hey, you got me, I will do whatever you need done. I won't make any decisions without you. I will run everything past you. We'll take out whoever you need to take out. Whatever we need to do, you got me. I'm so sorry that I have not been on board with you. I know this is everything that you have been asking me to do up in, always, and this is what you've always expected. And now I'm coming to you saying, okay, I'll do it now. And I know it seems a little late, but seriously, I will, and I promise I will. I was definitely going to keep my word. He would have had me. But he says if he puts Xavier on the block, he doesn't think he has the votes to send him home now. And that did not make sense to me, because if Chada and I were not on the block next to each other, he would have absolutely had the votes to send him home. But he never wanted to send him home. And that part I just could not understand, because I wasn't playing the same game as him. That was the moment I should have realized, like, we are definitely not playing the same game. I said me and Ozzy weren't playing the same game. No, Kylan and I were not playing the same game.
Yeah. I don't think anybody was playing the same game as Kylan.
Don't know what game Kylan was playing.
So, what is the status of Thailand?
Where did this question come from? I thought we were talking about Week 6.
Well, there's a lot of speculation about you two getting closer toward the end of the season, and you don't have to comment if you don't want. But there was a lot of talk about this. Is Thailand even a thing?
Thailand. So what does that mean? Is Thailand a thing? Thailand is Tiff and Kylan, right? So we are essentially friends. We did get a little closer, like we cuddled a little more. Listen, I was trying to stay in the house. It takes a little cuddling. As long as this doesn't cross the line, nothing I'll be embarrassed about. My son is not like, what the heck is my mom doing? I've seen the video. It does look a little compromising, but he was on one side of the cover and I was on the other side of the cover. There was no crossing the line here. But Kylan is my friend. I love Kylan to death. We are so past. Even when I got evicted, it was a game to me. I thought it was a very bad move on his part. But I am just that type of person that I don't hold grudges. I refuse to. And unless it is detrimental to me. If you have tried to, it depends on how damaging it is, but making a bad game move, costing me $750,000. I'm a little salty about it, but I'm not mad. But that's my friend.
How much does he have to pay you to sort of like balance out the scale here? How much does he owe you?
$700,000, because America rewarded me $50,000.
Okay.
So we still owe
So America footed some of the bill there.
Thanks, America. he better say thank you, America. Yes, but thank you, America. Yeah, he still owes me $700. So he's got some work to put in.
All right. Okay, so you're voted out.
Yes. And I was mad. Oh, I don't know if y'all saw that on the live feeds. I was mad as I don't know what. Oh, wait.
Were you mad that you didn't get a vote?
No.
Yeah.
No. At that point, what is a pity vote going to do for me? I don't care about a sympathy vote. It was such a big thing
all season long.
It was, people were doing jury management. I didn't care about it. Listen, if that vote doesn't keep me in this house, you can keep it. I don't even care. No, I was not mad about not getting a sympathy vote.
You come out, you talk to Julie. Did Julie air hug you?
Yes.
She did. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it weird to be greeted by an air hug when you walk out the door?
Yes, because, we're physical in this house. Like, we're hugging, so we're embracing, I'm telling you, being in there for that long, we almost forgot about COVID, So when you come out and Julie's like, air hug, I'm like, oh yeah, we can't get close. Because who doesn't want to hug Julie? I'm like, I just got evicted. I need a hug. Gotta hug myself.
Did any of the goodbye messages stand out to you?
So the crazy part is, on stage with Julie and I just immediately jumped into conversation, and we talked for so long. I didn't see any goodbye messages on stage with Julie, but I did get to see my goodbye messages in the jury house. And I will say that seeing, so I did see, I don't think I saw a goodbye message from Big D. I don't know if I did or not. It might have went in one and out. But the one that stood out to me was actually Kylan's and Xavier's. Okay, so this is what I'll say. Kylan said to me in his goodbye message, you once told me that you would respect the player who took you out of the game, and I hope that you still mean that. And I did say that to him, and I actually did mean that, because I knew when I said that comment that I was playing a good game. And I almost felt like if somebody doesn't want to take me out, I'm offended. So, the fact that they viewed me as a threat was an honor to me. Like, thank you for showing me that I am playing a good game. So for his resume, I respected the move, but for our gameplay as a whole, I did not think that it was a smart move, because we could have made it to 3 and we possibly could have been sitting in the final 2 seats together. But if he never planned on me going to the end with him, it was a great move on his part to take me out. And then Xavier addressed the fact that, oh, bless you. Xavier, who had not really said too much to me in the house about my gameplay, and just not knowing how he really felt about my gameplay. In his goodbye message, he was like, Tiff, you're a legend in this game. I was really shocked to get that compliment from him, because I did not think that he felt that way. So I was like, oh, okay. And then Azza was like, you've been my big sis in this game. And we had come a long way from the conversation that we had in the Have Not room with Xavier being the mediator. And once Brittany left, Azza and I never had a conflict. And so I think it was just her emotional attachment to Brittany, and just being emotional with Brittany through her times. So Azza and I were great. My goodbye messages did kind of create some closure for me.
Yeah.
I don't remember what Derek F said, unfortunately.
So you get to the jury house. Yeah. Anything from the jury house that stood out? What were the conversations about the players?
They all wanted to know, because at that time they had kind of put together that we were all working together. And the surprising thing was that they were saying that Kylan was saying something about a secret alliance in his goodbye messages. And I am like, what? Because we were, as a whole, we were working together to all be on the same page about how we were sending people to jury. Were we saying something to them? Were we not saying anything? Is anybody saying anything in their goodbye messages? And I really believed that no one was saying anything, but come to find out, Kylan was saying something. I don't think he said anything to Brittany, but maybe Derek got a goodbye message from Kylan insinuating that there was a secret alliance. Sarah Beth did. They all did. So they all kind of had the story put together a little bit. And it kind of, to me, I felt, made us look not so honest, because here he is saying that there is an alliance, and we're like, hey, you didn't have the numbers to say. But they were all very receptive. They just wanted to know a lot of the moves that were made that they were not aware of, but everyone was really receptive and welcoming, and it made my entrance that much more easier. And honestly, when I got there and I got to have the conversations with the other jury members, I was glad, and I realized then I am a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. I had to be the first person to come into the jury house. It had to be me. I had to be the one to answer the questions, and I had to be the one to lay out our truth. And I think that if it had been Hannah, I'm not going to say that she couldn't have handled it, but that would have just been too much for her. she had a difficult time adjusting just to not being in the house. I would not have wanted her to have to bear that pressure. I felt that I was the best person to be able to lay out what had happened in the house and what our game plan, our strategy was, and what our mission was and why, and to just answer those questions that they had.
Yeah, and it was a big moment for you on the show too. I mean, it was really, they talk about when you make the master plan, they show that, but it really did feel like you coming to jury and explaining the master plan to the jury members it felt like the first real celebration of you. And it was like the first time we're like, all right, maybe she has a shot at this AFP thing here.
Really? See, I haven't seen that tape, but I do remember being in that moment, the surprise that they shared, because I think it might have been Alyssa who said, well, who came up with the plan? Mm-hmm. And I was like, how do you guys even know it was a plan? And so I'm like, I came up with this master plan, oh my God, it was you. And I'm like, yeah. But I was actually afraid to say that because I did not know how it would be received. Oh my God, you plan to take us all out? Kind of. I was planning to get us to the end. You look at it as taking you all out. I look at getting us to the end.
Yeah.
Tomato.
I liked the discussion in the house surrounding pawns versus partners versus...
Yeah, it's not a pawn. I never, I didn't even like the term pawn. I think one time a question was posed to me with the term pawn, and I answered the question rephrasing the term, but I think that's the last time I said it because they were our partners and our friends and our duos were never pawns. In the game of Big Brother, I guess that's how you can classify it, but I never considered anybody a pawn.
Yeah. So when you're in the jury, obviously Chada follows fairly quickly.
Gosh, yes.
So I can't imagine there's too much of a chance to discuss what her chances would have been.
I was not expecting that.
Yeah. Especially with an Ozzy HOH.
I was not expecting Chada to follow me. For some reason, I felt that she was probably one of the safest in the house. I felt that Xavier or Kyland would want to keep her closer, even though I felt that Ozzy was more loyal to Xavier. I thought that he had this love for Chada that it would be hard for him to send her out. I was wrong.
It felt that way up until that second HOH train. Yeah. But she comes in from my perspective. It looked like if she had made it to the final two, she had a very good chance to win against anybody.
Chada baby was getting my vote.
Yeah.
I can't.
And with your vote, right?
And I would have. Are you kidding me? Round table. Listen, we're not leaving this table until everybody understands that Chada needs to win. Mm-hmm. You guys want to talk about the master plan, the strategizing, the how you all, even myself, are all sitting here. Chada's still in that seat. You have no idea what she did, but let me tell you what she did. I would have fought for Chada. She would have won. Xavier might be an attorney, but I was gonna have my final two speech ready for her at the round table.
So they took out the player that would beat everyone in a jury vote. Then they took out the next player that would beat everyone in a jury vote. Definitely bringing the most deserving players to the end.
Definitely.
So then about the final four.
Yes.
And what are the discussions here? Because from your perspective, I know you had a lot of respect for Kyland's game, minus the Batman versus Superman thing. And you also, seem to respect Xavier as well. You have really patched things up with Azza. She's a wonderful person. Big D, I imagine, just at any point was never had a chance with the jury.
Speaking for myself, he never had a chance.
So was there...
Big D did not play a $750,000 game.
I think he played a $50,000 game. Or sorry, $75,000 game.
Should have went out at 6. And I said that
shit. So was there a rooting interest at that point of those final four? Were you thinking, who was your top pick to win the game that would have gotten your vote the most?
I wanted to see Kylan and Xavier in the final two. I wanted to hear their pitches. I wanted to see them fight. I think that at that time, since Chada and I were in jury, that those two had been playing the better Big Brother game. I knew Xavier had the respect of the jury just because he had not had any issues with anyone. I don't think Xavier ever turned anyone against him. No one ever turned against Xavier. Everyone pretty much respected him and how he had played the game. But to me, Kylan was playing Big Brother from week one, from day one. Day two, he's got Frenchie is on his head, and then he's on the block, and then he gets the veto used on him, and then he wins HOH, then he gets Frenchie out, and then he's, he was playing Big Brother from the time he walked in the door. He's got all of this blood on his hands. I wanted to hear him get up there and say those things, regardless of how people felt about him as a person. I mean, he was playing the game. His hands were dirty. I had the master plan. Chada and I had totally picked it apart. He went in and executed a lot of it. And so I wanted to see him say those things. I also felt that Xavier had played a good game just because he downplayed his game a lot, and we didn't get to see what he was really capable of. But when it was time for him to win, he always won when he needed to. That veto comp when he won, when he put that puzzle together, I said, what was that, 30 seconds? Did they give you the blueprint? Did you see it before? Was your puzzle even on the ground? Was it up when we already got here? How did you do this? And so he definitely pulled, when he turned his switch on, his switch was on. I still think that Kylan would have gotten my vote.
Even if he was the one to take Xavier to the final two over, say, Big D or Azza?
Overtaking Big D or Azza to the final two? If he would have taken Xavier to the final two? I think people don't want to give him that vote because it kind of seems egotistical to take Xavier, but that was what he always wanted. He was he would not at that point have been doing anything he did not always say he wanted to do. For him to do anything different, I think that would have caused the jury to be like, oh, so he was lying the whole time. So for him to take Xavier would be him doing exactly what he said he was going to do. So that would not have been a surprise to me, and I would not have looked at that as a disadvantage to him winning the game. Other people feel differently about it, like, why would you take Xavier? But that was what he said he always would do. It would be the same as if he would have taken me.
What is your read on what the vote would have been if Kylan takes Xavier to the final two?
Probably 6-3.
For Xavier?
Yeah.
The three being you?
Probably me, SB, and DX.
SB?
I think SB would have voted for Kai.
Yeah. Because we weren't sure, because, I guess she was throwing his hoodie out the window.
She was, and when I got to jury, I was never expecting her to not feel a connection to Kylan because they had such a good friendship in the house. So when I got there and I saw this hoodie out the window, I'm like, whoa, no, what is going on? And, I could tell that there was some hurt there. And I am just the type of person who I don't like to see people hurt. And regardless of me wanting her out of the game, I always wanted her to be comfortable, happy, and confident in her gameplay. And so when she said that she felt like betrayed by him, I'm like, well, listen, let's sit down and let's talk about this. I don't want you to feel like Kylan wasn't genuine in how he felt about you. He definitely tried to keep you safe as long as he could. Let's just put things in perspective. Don't cancel him until you actually have a conversation with him. These are just things that you're going off of. But I think by the time we got to talking and I was just explaining the gameplay and how I felt about how he really felt about their friendship, I think she felt a little more comfortable about it and recognized that if I take my personal feelings about maybe him having my back or not, him playing the game of Big Brother, he was still playing the game of Big Brother. So, and I was like, even if he's sitting next to Xavier and people just don't want to vote for him, look, we cannot let him go out on a unanimous vote. He does not deserve to not get a vote. So I was going to vote for him regardless.
So, when Kylan comes walking in to the jury roundtable,
just send me home.
You are not pleased.
Not
because,
at all.
Yeah.
Because that just meant that I was right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I wanted to be wrong. Mm-hmm. I'm like, what's your question, Taran?
No, I mean, that was exactly,
I was so disappointed, and I wanted to be wrong. When I left, I told him, if I leave, you are right behind me. So he does hug me at the round table and go, see, but I wasn't right behind you. Yeah, whatever. Whatever. Yeah, you by one, but we're still in the bottom three, and I always said we were in the bottom three. We will go right behind each other. And I did not want to see him there.
Did you guys watch the clip of Kylan leaving?
We did watch the clip of Kylan leaving.
So we're always curious about this, like how much you guys see in the jury. Do you usually see like the full vote out and walk out?
We do see the vote. We hear the vote and the walkout. I don't know how much of it is edited though. Like we always see the same thing. So I don't know if we missed something, because when we watch the clip is back in the jury, even like with the nomination ceremony, we don't hear the HOH's speech. We just see the two keys that they turn. So, and then we don't hear a lot of the speech from the eviction. So we did get to see Kylan leave, however, and the words exchanged between him and Xavier.
What was the reaction of the jury when they watched this clip?
Okay, so I was on the edge of my seat. I kept scooting up more and more. Like, what is going on? Wait. Now, I'll just tell you, it reminds me of when I thought the straw was a hockey stick on Massive Cocktail. And I say that because when I hear Kylan saying, but your nephew, and then, or Xavier saying something about his nephew, I'm like, who's his nephew? Is Big D his nephew? I'm like, I was so lost. I'm like, is Big D his nephew? What is he talking? Because there was a bleep and I couldn't hear the name. I did not know who he was. Who is this nephew he's talking about? However, I could see Xavier. One thing I can read is Xavier's body language, and I can always tell when he is not happy about something. No matter what he says or doesn't say, his whole, it comes through his entire, it's all over his face. You can just tell. And I'm looking at Xavier's face and I'm like, oh, this is not good. And Kylan is just like, yeah, but and I'm like, I think Kylan just need to go see Julie. I don't think this conversation is going to go well. I don't think it was the best exit. I am aware that there was some miscommunication, but just going back to my own eviction, how I woke up feeling that day, how I felt like I wanted to leave, and the transition I made from waking up to the moment I left, I wanted to leave with class and dignity. I wanted to leave with my head up, and I wanted to show them love, because that was genuinely how I felt. I'd already accepted I was going at that point. But I do understand that Kylan's situation and his exit was different, because it was after the veto and he probably did not know what was going on, and he had a different expectation, whereas I had time to process it. I don't want that to have been his exit, but that is the way he chose to leave. And I still don't know how that conversation, and I do know what he was trying to imply because he's expressed it, but I just don't know if that was the time to do it.
Did anybody confront him about this when they watched it?
We watched it at the round table. And so I think we all were just in that moment, all eyes were like, hi. So what? And then, Kylan's got 13 trillion words, and he's like, well, no. First of all, he's always got his hand he's like, no, well, see, this is what you don't understand is, see, what I was saying was, and then I'm like, okay, I still don't know, but yeah. Yeah, we were wondering what was that about. And honestly, in that moment, I'm more so concerned about the two guys and where they would be after that moment, because Xavier seems to me to be just pretty matter of fact. And I was a person who never really wanted to get on his bad side, because he's very straight and narrow to me, and he either likes or he doesn't. And I did not know what damage that conversation could have done, and I just didn't want to see them not leave this game and this house on a good note. So that was my main concern, was I hope this doesn't damage their relationship.
So Kylan comes in, and that means that 2 of Big D, Azah, and Xavier will be in the final 2. Was there any expectation or hope that that Azah could pull this off? Because from our perspective, it was like all of a sudden Azah is now theoretically one competition away from winning this game. All she needs to do is beat Xavier in part 3 and take Big D. I'm assuming that if she does that, she wins the game.
Yes, I was going for Azah to be in the final 2 seats all the way once I saw Kylan come into the round table. I felt that it would be great to see Xavier and Azah in the final 2 seats. I still think Xavier would have won, but I don't think he would have won on a unanimous vote. I would have loved to see a black man and a black woman sitting in the final 2. I feel like she did deserve to be sitting there at that time if she had made it that far. I would have loved to see her win $75,000. And and even going back to it just being the final 3, if she would have sat in the final 2 with Big D, she would have definitely won. So once I saw Kylan come through the door, I was definitely hoping to see Azah sitting in the final 2 seats. But Kylan confirmed to us at the round table that Xavier's goodbye message said he was taking Big D, and I think my whole mouth hit the floor. I was like, I don't know anything in this house.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that.
Yeah,
But Xavier was playing to win, and I always said that. Oh, well, hello.
Okay.
Oh, my. We have a friend.
Yeah, we have a guest, a surprise guest.
Wow. Say hi to the bee. Seriously, the bee really wanted his camera time.
Really? Yeah. All right. I think we're good.
Okay.
Okay, so Xavier versus Big D, everyone agrees. Was there any thought, because it really felt like from the exit interviews that there was definitely a chance Kylan would not vote for Xavier no matter what. But he ends up giving Xavier his vote. Was that a thought in the roundtable, or was he always like, I'd of course vote for Xavier?
I don't think that we actually considered that he wouldn't. But he was trying to make some claims for Big D's game.
Right.
I was never hearing that.
Yeah.
Big D was not going to get my vote, even if the seat next to him was empty. And that is not a personal move. I just did not think Big D played a $750,000 game. I don't care what contributions he made. Big D was not going to get my vote as being the best player for Big Brother 23, having beat out all the people in the cookout. I don't care if he was sitting in an empty seat next to him. No, he was not going to get my vote.
Yeah. So Xavier wins on stage, confetti. Do you have any expectation that maybe I'll be in the top 3 at least?
Top 3 AFP?
Yeah.
Top 3, yes.
And you probably expected Derek.
Definitely expected Derek. I so expected Derek that in the jury house I'm telling him, So when you win, I want to watch or something. I'm like, I really like Tiffany jewelry. We can go to the Tiffany store. You can buy me a Tiffany watch. You can buy me something that I will always have. I like something tangible. So, don't send me flowers. He's like, would you fly out to Hawaii? I'm like, yes, we can go to Hawaii. We go see Travis. Whatever. Yes, I was already spending Derek's AFP money.
Are you now gonna give him a watch?
No. I'm just kidding. No, I gave him a house.
That's very true. That's very true. You didn't even need to pay for it.
I gave him a place to live for the week, right?
Yeah, there you go. I mean, that's worth more than a watch, really.
I'm such a giving person. I always love everybody. I don't care how people feel about that. That's just me, and nobody's going to change it. But I love all my house guests. And at some point, I will find a way to send everyone something nice from me.
Very nice. So now you're here.
Yes.
But I guess tell me how it was. So Julie says top two.
Yeah.
Derek X and you.
I'm like, what? Honestly, I thought it would be both Derek's. Don't ask me why. I don't know. You don't have a real clue in that house of what's going on outside the house.
Well, do you know how the voting worked?
I do not know.
So weirdly, and I don't think they've ever done this before, but they had you text in your vote.
Okay.
Text your vote. Text the name of the person to a number. Like we're in the early 2000s. Like normally you just go online and you cast your vote online.
Yep. Because I remember voting like crazy last season for Davon.
And you look at a picture of the person. You click on that.
Mm-hmm.
But there was some speculation that there are two Dereks.
Oh.
And one of them is very, very popular, and the other one is maybe popular.
Yes.
And we don't know this for sure, but after Derek X is evicted, Big D did not get $100 anymore.
True.
So it's if you type in Derek, you have to specify X or F
because they're spelled the same.
Yep. So
we never considered that BB Bucks. It was for Derek X and not for Derek F. We were just like, both Dereks are loved by America, obviously.
Yeah. So again, not to say that that's definitely what happened,
right?
But it was definitely speculated on, especially once he dropped after Derek X left. But it is very possible, I think, that he was in third place.
Okay.
But they said 1 and 2.
I think I heard that it was Hannah.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. That wouldn't surprise me either because she has a very, very large fan base.
She does. Who doesn't love Hannah?
Yeah. She's awesome, by the way.
Of course she is. Of course she is.
So Julie says it's very close. Mm-hmm. You're like, really?
I know. I really am like, what?
Have you seen how hard people were campaigning for you?
Oh my gosh, I did. So after this, and I have my press questions, I'm getting some hints, from my interviews. They're saying like, I'm sure you haven't been on Twitter yet, but just wait till you see. And then people were saying like people's names on Twitter are text Tiffany to 97979. And I'm like, what? So then when I get out and I get my phone and I see this overwhelming support for me, I've never experienced anything like that in my life. I had no idea, it was, I don't even know what to say, like to receive that much acknowledgement and for so many people to have the desire for me to win something, I was just floored, like, wow, because you don't know what what your reception is from America when you come out of the house. I'm like, they either love me or they hate me. And to know that they love me so much, it meant the world to me to win AFP, almost more than winning the season because it just took 5 of us to vote for the winner. It took America to vote for me. And I loved that because I felt that I was really in that game by myself, except for America. Like, I'm like, America, it's me and you. Listen, this is what is going on with me. Can you guys send me something? And they're like, yes, we're going to send you these votes, Tiff. And I was like, I love the BB fandom. I love the people that watch BB and recognized what I was doing in the game that I was playing, and me being somebody's favorite, because, you know, so many times I'm not. But it's like always overlooked, you know, but I wasn't overlooked in that moment. And I felt like I got my flowers and I loved it. And so I thank America wholeheartedly. That's why I really do read like my messages. I read the texts, the comments on the pictures. I try to go through the tweets. I try to acknowledge them and like them and respond as much as I can, because I know that these are the people who helped me win. They took time out of their day to vote for me, and I appreciate it.
Yeah. So here you are at Todrick's house.
Am I? I'm outside.
How did this happen?
So I was stuck with press on finale night, and everyone had already gone back to the hotel. I'm 3 hours behind everyone else, and so because they were able to leave, but we had to stay and do press, and so I'm thinking everyone's in the hotel room. So when I finally get my phone back, I'm like, "What room are you guys in?" And they're like, "We're at Todrick's house," and I'm like, "Where's Todrick's house?" And what do you mean? Like, Todrick who? And so they're like, Todrick Hall. And I'm like, wait, okay, sounds familiar, but I don't know that I know who this is all the way. And so I'm like, okay, well, let me get changed. I get in an Uber, I get here, and it's like a whole BB party, and I am fanning out. And I was just so excited to be around other people, to be outside of the house, but the love that I received when I walked in the door, Todrick he greeted me outside. He was like, oh my God, I'm so glad you're here. I put this party together because I wanted you guys to be able to have somewhere to go, something to do, somewhere to celebrate the win that you guys did. And it was so dope. I felt so welcome from the moment I met him. We are laughing at the same things. I'm like, this is really like, are we related? How do you know me? Like, it was just a connection immediately. And he's someone like myself, just giving and open and wanting people to have a good time, loves to share, is just so welcoming and warm, and I so appreciated it. But we had an Airbnb, so we were like, we had already known that we were going to stay for a little while because we wanted to be able to expand on these opportunities. We wanted to put ourselves in front of people that may be able to help us leaving the Big Brother house with some careers. We wanted to see what we were going to be able to do, and staying in LA instead of flying home and then having to come back was the best way to do it. So we got an Airbnb, but it was so many of us at the time that we got the Airbnb, we got a big one, but we knew we were going to need to downsize to a smaller one because some were leaving and some were staying. So Todrick asked me, like, well, where are you guys going? I'm like, I don't know. We're moving out of this Airbnb today. We're looking for another one. And he's like, well, why don't you guys just come here? And I'm like, no, we can't do that. I'm like, it's not just me. It's me and this person and this person. He's like, no, you guys can come here. And I'm like, seriously? And he's like, yes, please come and stay, and I'll be out, and you guys can stay. And I was like, wow, that is so dope. And I talked about it with the other people, and they were like, yes, if you're comfortable with going, we can go if he wants us to come. If he says it's cool, then it's cool. And so we're here.
Here you are. Now, what's the plan? Where are you going from here?
Oh, man. I don't want to leave LA. I really don't. Like, I could live here forever. So my family is like, we know you want to live in LA. They're like, we said that. I said that to them before I left. I was like, you know, I'm going to go to LA and film Big Brother, but you guys know I'm never coming back. And they were like, yeah, we know. So then I talked to my son about it. I'm like, so what are we going to do? I was like, well, you want to come to LA? So now my son's on his way to LA. So we're going to hang out. I'm going to take him to Disneyland. We're going to see the city. And, you know, I really do want to relocate. Love Detroit. Detroit will always be my home, but I've always wanted to get out anyway. I have no idea what the future holds. I would love to continue to do some TV, film, entertainment. With the cameras in my face 24/7 now, I'm just used to it. I'm like, yeah, you got a camera, I'll talk. Let's roll. What do you want to know? I got something for you. So I would love to continue to do that. I'm better as myself. I don't know if I can act, but I might be able to pull something out of my sleeve.
Well, there was that one time you were fake crying with Ozza early in the season.
Yes. That is a moment. It is a moment.
That was a very fun moment in the episode.
I loved it. I was like, Ozza, come on, we got to get it planned. My son has 3 more years left in school. He's a freshman in high school. I've got to make a decision on if I want to pull him from school and we start over here, if I want him to finish school there and then he goes off to college, and then I don't know, but I am a go with the flow type of person. I try to see what direction I'm being moved in, and I will go from there. But he'll be here in a few days, and then we'll get to see how we feel. I can't make any decisions without him.
Oh man, he's gonna.
I know. He's like, we're
love
never.
This place,
he's
right?
like, Mom, we're never going back. I'm like, get it, we're never going back. Hey, yo, tell your mom I'm never coming home.
Can we live in a place like this here?
And he definitely is going to be like, can we just live here? I'm like, now listen, we got to start small. We got to crawl before we walk. But maybe one day.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you'll be doing some podcasts with us as well.
I would love to do some podcasts.
Yeah. Are you a Survivor fan?
I've never seen Survivor. I am such a huge Big Brother fan. I don't watch any other shows.
Oh, there you go.
But I have heard about Survivor. I could not hear about Survivor. So I feel like I need to watch Survivor. But are you trying to ask me if I'm going to go on Survivor?
I mean, you should.
Why would I want to live outside in the wilderness?
For $1 million. It's only 26 days now.
Is it?
Yeah.
26 days on beans and rice outside in the wilderness?
Yeah. $1 million. Not bad.
I might do it.
Yeah, there you go.
You might.
You heard it here first.
You did hear it here first, because my answer was no, but you said 26 days. I'm like, I just did 71 days. I think I can do 26 days.
Right? Yeah. Well, is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Is there anything else that you feel like you want to bring up?
I really just want to thank America for the love that they showed me. That was a feeling that is unexplainable. You guys made me feel so much better leaving the house, and just to know that people took the time out to acknowledge me and to vote for me. I could not have won America's Favorite Player without America. Thank you, America. I love America. Keep following me. Follow me on Instagram at absolutely-gorgeous100. I'm trying to change that. And follow me on Twitter at absolutely-tiff. I love that name. Keep following me. I'm going to try to do some things, and who knows, maybe you'll see me on a big screen somewhere.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for...
Thank you, Taran, for having me. And Taran is such an amazing guy. He came all the way to see me, like, in person. So when people say, like, why is she still in LA? I am handling business here, people. That's what you do. You handle business. That's what I do. So, yes, you have fun, but you can handle business and have fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you for inviting me to do this in person. It was very fun talking with you, and it was very fun watching you all season long. I mean, right from the beginning, you really, from my perspective at least, you made the season for me. You know, it's not every season that I get to like sort of experience that. The joy of watching like players that you just you love to watch all season long, and you were definitely that player for a lot of people, including myself. So
everyone on Twitter gave you all the credit for bringing awareness to my gameplay. So I owe you. I'm the favorite, but I think I'm the favorite because of how much you shared. You know,
you are a star. You are a star.
Gosh.
I am just a man with a microphone
and a voice, though. You put it out there, so everyone has made sure that I know to give Taran credit for putting out my gameplay. And I love the podcast that you made. putting my strategies together, showing the things that I did in the house, because some people in the house felt like I didn't do anything.
Yeah, and that was, honestly, we should thank them too, because they really prompted the response to be like, excuse me.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, house guests.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you, Taran.
Thank you to the audience.
Thank you, America.
Hopefully you enjoyed this video. I apologize for the cuts and the location changes and everything else. But hopefully this was good. Really just experimenting. This is the first video in-person interview that I've done, and I'm not really equipped for it, but we did our best here.
I love being the first.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys for joining us. You can, of course, find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Taran Armstrong, or on Twitter @ArmstrongTaran. I do a Survivor podcast that's going to be going on this season for 41. Tiffany will be back.
Yes.
We'll get her to talk about Survivor. We'll get her on Survivor, and then we'll talk about her on Survivor.
Ooh, I might need to call Jesse.
And then, we're going to have some fun. So thank you guys again, and see you all later.
See you later. Bye, America.
All right, there you have it. That was Tiffany's game for Big Brother 23. I mean, I can't say enough good things about Tiffany. She was so generous to allow me so much of her time to do this. When I arrived there, she was so nice, so warm and welcoming, and just you immediately know why she's so good at Big Brother. I mean, she's very charming and was so generous with her time and with everything. I very, very much appreciate everything that she did. I had a blast talking with her and the other house guests over there. So again, just thank you so much to Tiffany. Make sure you go and thank Tiffany for doing this, because she was amazing, and you should tell her she's amazing for all of it. So do that. You can also find me over on Twitch, twitch.tv/Taran Armstrong, if you are interested. I actually talked about my whole experience, the whole trip from conception to the end of it over on Twitch. If you're interested in hearing about my experience, you can find it there. You can also find me on Twitter @ArmstrongTaran. We should have a couple more of these interviews for you here in the postseason for Big Brother 23. But either way, we will be back for Celebrity Big Brother in the new year. So keep an eye out for that. Of course, I also have a Survivor podcast that I have been running here for season 41. As you heard, Tiffany, maybe we can get her on Survivor. I don't know. But you can check that out as well, the Survivor Stock Watch. And that's what I have for you. I just, I want to thank you guys, your support, and your listenership, your viewership, the fact that you guys keep coming back year after year, every season. It means so much, and we would never have been able to do any of the cool things that we've been able to do without all of your support. So I very much appreciate all of that, and that's what I have for you. So thank you once more for everything, and I will see all of you next time.